All right, everybody, we are back. What a what a fun ride, right? The computer just crashes right at the perfect time. But hey, we're here, and we're here with a good friend of mine. He is Gilbert Thurston in real life, but he goes by PGT4JC online. He's also at Your Poker Pastor on Twitter. Let's give a warm welcome to Gilbert. How you doing tonight, buddy?
Doing good. How about yourself?
It's been a day. I'm really glad that it crashed like 20 minutes before the interview instead of
Right.
like 10 minutes in, and then we have to start all over again. So it went good.
Right.
But I've been looking forward to this all week. I know a lot of people know who you are from, of course, seeing your play on the Carbon Streets. Anybody that's played against you on there is like, they know exactly who you are. But it's gonna be cool. I think we were talking beforehand. Like, this is your first time actually on a stream. Like, people getting to see your face, hear from you, and
Right.
obviously you're a very unique person because of what you do. I don't want to call it the day job, but what you do for a living and what your career or your, even that word sounds gross. We'll just say
Right.
what your job is, right? And at the same time being a poker player. So yeah, why don't we just start there? Why don't you talk about a little bit about how you got into poker and how your poker journey started, and then we'll kind of come into like what you do for a living and all that.
Sure. So my family's always been very competitive, always into games. So we were always playing various types of board games, card games, you name it. And so at a very early age, learned the game of poker. And then you may not even know this, but my background was I was a professional magician for many years.
No, really?
Yeah.
I did
Yeah.
not know that.
Yeah. I started that as a hobby when I was 8, and when I was 16, I got a job at a magic shop and started traveling and performing and all kinds of stuff. So there's always a pack of cards laying around. So we always, played a lot of card games too in that. And so many of the games that I would play with other magicians was, dealer's choice type things with a billion wild cards,
Yeah.
everything. And we played this one game. It was crazy. It was called 7 Card No Peak Pair Matches the Pot. And I'm not going to get into the whole thing, but it built some ridiculous pots. We were playing like quarter, I think,
Yeah.
quarter bets. But then like you could get like a lot of times hundreds of dollars in a hand, and sometimes $1,000 some in a hand.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I was like, I'm like 16, 17, 18 years old and playing, these monster pots. But I was making some good money doing magic, because not only was I working at the shop, but I was performing then as well. And so while my friends were flipping burgers, making minimum wage, I had more disposable income. So anyway, got started with that. And then I think it was maybe about 2007 or 8 when Facebook started to allow adults, not just college kids, to be on their platform. And so Zynga had a free play site. I don't know if you remember that on Facebook. And I can't remember exactly, but it was something like they started you like with 10,000 in free, play money dollars or whatever. And it was like 2 or 3 weeks later, and I had it like at 1.4 million or something.
Wow.
And so it was just way too easy. And so a friend of mine's mom from at our church, we would get together with them every Sunday night, have dinner, and we would always sit and play poker. And it was his mom, and Pat was probably, I don't know, late 60s, early 70s maybe at the time. She's like, well, I play on Poker Stars. And I'm like, what's a Poker Stars? And so she told me that that's where she was playing. I downloaded the site and started playing their free money. And it was like probably within a month or so, I got an email from them, said that, hey, we've credited your account with $2 real. I was like, oh, okay, let's see what I can do with these $2 real. Now, what I'm about to say is horrible because it was terrible bankroll management. I'm like a fiend for bankroll management now, but I didn't know that there was such thing as a bankroll management, right?
Sure.
And so long story short with it, I spend the $2 up to 10 in cash games. And then I entered one of the $3.30, what were they, 180?
Yeah, 180
Yeah.
bands.
With $3.30. Now, again, I have a $10 bankroll and I'm spending 1/3 of it, right?
Yeah.
This one tournament, because again, I didn't know any better. But anyway, in that tournament, I got lucky, and a lot of my story at the beginning was a lot of luck. Um, and I ended up like third or fourth in that tournament. And, so now I have a couple $100, and then just kept playing those and just kept building it, building it, building it, building it. And so that's how it all started. I have never actually wagered one of my own dollars.
Wow.
Because it all originally started with those $2 free that they gave me.
They created a monster and didn't even know it.
yeah. So it's amazing to think about how much I've made through the years and to realize that it all started with $2.
Wow, that is incredible. And then you, so you did some coaching through Drew, or you approached coach, or what? How did you and Drew meet?
Yeah. So I think you were saving this a little bit till later, the way you asked the question. But as a spoiler, I am a pastor. That's my full-time job. And back in late 2009, God called us to move to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, a place we had never been to really before, and to start a church from scratch. And so when you're just moving to a strange area that you don't know anybody, you got to try to meet people. And so we call it church planting. That's what starting a new church is. And all the advice says, join the Chamber of Commerce and blah, blah, blah. I was like, oh, that sounds boring. And so we were eating at a restaurant, and we noticed that they had a free poker game. And they actually offered it 3 nights a week. And so I was like, well, this be a neat way to get to know people. And, I love poker. And, by that point, obviously, Poker Stars and Full Tilt and everything had already had gone through Black Friday. And at that point, I had switched over to Bet Online right after Black Friday and was playing on there and doing well on there. Obviously, it was way different than Poker Stars and everything. But anyway, I was like, oh, yeah, let me go meet some people at this basically like a bar league type of thing. And so was playing there, doing well with that. One of the guys there said, hey, have you ever heard of Carbon? And I was like, no, I haven't heard of Carbon. And so downloaded their client, started playing on Carbon, and started to really crush on there to the point that before it was just like good side money, like a part-time job.
Right.
But then it was starting to get to the place where it was like, all right, I'm making almost at that point it would have still been a part-time wage, but I was always profitable. And I sort of felt stuck though. I was like, okay, if I'm going to take this sort of the next level, which I thought I could, I'm going to need some help. So that's when I started subscribing to, various training sites. And so the first one that I subscribed to, and I don't know if you remember this or not, but Pocket Fives actually used to be a training site. And so
I didn't remember that. No.
Yeah, it was like $29 a month or something. And you got all their videos, et cetera, just like a lot of the other sites. And so not only were they keeping track of all the scores and everything that they still do, but they were a training site as well. And so I was just watching different videos, and I came across this guy, Drew Peacocky. And I'm like watching one of his videos, and it was called Pokermon. And it was his tagging system for when you're multi-tabling, how to label players so that real quick when a screen pops up, they're either a yellow tag, green tag, blue tag, purple tag, whichever ones I forgot, orange tag. Which I love you orange tag people out there. You're how I pay my bills. Just saying. But anyway, so he had this whole thing. He was using Pokemon as a way to teach poker. And I thought, well, this is really cool because that's what I do when I preach. I try to take cultural, things that are happening in pop culture, various things, and say, okay, how can we take what people were hearing, whether it's a song on the radio or a movie that they're watching, and bridge that gap to the Bible then. And I thought he's doing the exact same thing that I do, except with poker. And right. So it just really resonated with my teaching style. So I reached out to him, and this would have been summer of 2013, 14, something like that. And said to him, hey, do you do coaching? He said, yeah. And so he said, tell you what, let's just do a quick consultation call before you actually, pay me anything, and just see if, we hit it off or not. And this was another one of those things that I hit my one outer on the river, because when he and I started talking, one of the first things he said was, "Hey, where are you from?" And I said, "Well, I just moved to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania." He's like, "No way. I just moved away from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania." And so we had that connection right away of being able to talk about, this restaurant or, this place or whatever. And so we just became really, really close friends. I started getting the coaching from him. And wow, what a difference that made. You're familiar with like the 4 levels of learning, unconscious incompetence, that type of thing. And so the way I always say that one is, sometimes there's just things that you don't know that you don't know.
Yeah.
And even though I was already a winning player, Drew was able to open my eyes up that, wow, there's just some things I don't know that I don't know about this game. And from there, it took off for me. And just been an amazing ride these past 4 or 5, how many ever years. And yeah, it's been incredible. And he's become a great friend. We've become very, very close. And it all goes back to him and I just spending those hours together. And before there was a Twitch, there was a Facebook private chat. That was he and myself and another guy. His name is his screen name is Focus Motion. The 3 of us, we would just be in chat together every single night while we were grinding, and just encouraging one another. And it was, an amazing journey.
Yeah.
And
So there's going to be a whole bunch of questions and things topics we're going to get to, of course, because of this whole like poker faith thing and everything coming together. And so we're gonna roll into all that at some point for sure. But just to touch a little bit in that area. So you are a pastor in real life, like we're in fake life here. I don't know, that tag phrase is always so bad.
Nothing's real online.
Right? I can remember a time when I was playing back on PokerStars. I was a youth pastor in a Methodist church, and it was like I didn't want anybody to know. I had a work laptop that I played on, and so I would literally, like, when I was going to work, I would hide my icon sometimes, because like I didn't want someone like looking over my shoulder, seeing the app, freaking out. It took me a long time to get to a place where I was really comfortable saying, "Hey, I play poker." Sure. I was even uncomfortable times where my wife would tell people, because my wife would, run into people where, "What's your husband do for a living?" "He plays poker," and it's like, "Oh no, don't say that." And so that was a long progression for me. And then here I am. I'm coming out of a nonprofit I'd worked with for 4 or 5 years. Things didn't end well. I was discouraged. And I'm like getting back into poker. I'm finding out that Bitcoin's a thing. Hey, I can play poker and not have to wait 12 weeks for a cash out. I'm kind of getting excited. And so I'm like going back through my old, 2+2 and pocket fives. And literally, like, your blog was the first thing on the page. And at the end, like, I'm reading through your blog, and at the end it says, "Hey, you can reach me at your poker pastor on Twitter." And I said, wait a minute, like, time out here. Like, he has poker and pastor in his name on Twitter. And so I go looking at your profile, I'm like, oh wait, this guy's a pastor in a church? I'm like, there's no way that his church knows he plays poker. This is not a thing. So like I was like digging into you a little bit deeper, and I found the church website, and I was blown away. I'm like, holy crap, like, you actually play poker and you're a pastor. Like, how is this like possible? Talk a little bit, like, just about what that's been like. Like, your congregation knows about this, they're supportive of it. Like, how did that journey happen? How did those two things come to coexist?
Yeah, actually, I got to take you further back, though.
That's fine. Go as far back as you need to.
So I didn't become a Christian until I was in my early 20s. And when I became a Christian, I like completely disassociated myself from all things in the world. So, I mean, I stopped, watching TV and going to, and I'm not saying that that's what Christians are supposed to do. This is just, what I did. And so one of the things I did was, at that point, I had stopped playing poker, because I thought, oh, it's gambling, and I'm not gonna do that. And so it was one of those things that, and again, I'm just a new Christian, and so I'm not even a pastor yet, but people would say, oh, I'm going to Atlantic City for the weekend or whatever, and I'd be like, really, you're a Christian, blah blah blah. And even somebody doing $2 on a lottery or something. I was like, no, you shouldn't do that. Well, I still think that because lottery's a tax on stupid people. But anyway,
Yeah.
that's, I mean, if you think about it. Anyway, so I was like, no, you shouldn't do any of those things. And it wasn't until Lisa and I were actually at a movie, and I had just talked to somebody about you shouldn't even, be spending $10 on a, home game of poker or whatever. And we're sitting at the movie theater, and I all of a sudden just like, wait a second, we just dropped, I don't know, what, 30, 40 bucks between movie tickets and popcorn and, Mike and Ike's and all that kind of stuff. And we call it entertainment. But yet I'm looking down on people that would spend $10 on a poker game and call it entertainment. So that was the first thing that sort of shifted my thinking. And so I really started to investigate a little bit more. Okay, well, what does Scripture really say about gambling and everything? And actually, it doesn't say a whole lot. Now, just to be honest, I still don't do anything else but poker because I see poker as a completely different animal than slots or craps or blackjack or any of the other things. There's no such thing as a professional slot player's machine, or as a slot player, a professional slot player.
Yeah.
How do you say that?
Slot
is that right?
I don't know. Yeah.
Slot. Okay. Hopefully everybody understands what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You don't become a professional slot player person.
Yeah, that thing.
But yet there are professional poker players because poker is a completely different type of game. Yes, there is a element of gambling to it, and I know that there's probably some people from my church and other Christians that maybe don't play that are watching this. Actually, my mom may be even watching this. Hi, Mom.
Hi, Mom. Thank you for Gilbert.
I can't see who's on, but anyway. So it's one of those things that people don't understand how much of a game of skill this really is. And I was always really good at math, and it's basically one big math problem.
Yeah.
And it's I forget who said it one time that, a lot of people think that it's a game played with cards, but it's actually a people game that's played with cards. And so, reading players and et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot to it that goes into it that people don't understand. And so that's where, when it comes to like sharing with my church what I do and other Christians, that I make it very clear that I still think all those other things are gambling, but this isn't any different than, I own stocks and I own Bitcoin and other, cryptos. And I have a couple friends that are professional bowlers and, somebody that's a professional golfer. They enter tournaments. They spend money to enter in a tournament, and they're doing that because they have a certain skill level. But even in that, with golf, I remember a couple years ago, I was watching a golf tournament on a Sunday, and two guys hit like identical shots, approach shots into the green. And one guy's, and they literally hit at the same spot, but one guy's ball ricocheted and it went down onto the green right next to the pin. The other guy's ball ricocheted the opposite way into the bunker. Mm. So one guy caught a break, the other guy didn't catch a break. And that's that variance.
Yeah.
And that's what we experience in poker. Yes, things are going to happen that, even though you play the hand the right way, you're always going to win the hand.
Right.
But over time, if you keep making the right decisions, you will come out as a winner. And that's just sort of what I've done for years and years and years and years now. If it was a luck game, then there wouldn't be people like myself and others who every single year have a profitable year. Because there is a skill element, but that, and as you know, takes a lot of work. It's not just fire up the computer and load up, I usually have 4, 5, 6 tournaments going at a time. It's not just firing it up and just hoping for the best. There's a lot of study and talking to people like yourself and Drew and others about hands. And I mean, once Drew and I had gotten past that initial coaching, we had some like 2-hour coaching sessions where we would like maybe talk about 2 hands the entire 2-hour period, because the hands were just that complex
Yeah.
that it took 2 hours to discuss two hands. All the various decision tree stuff that you could do, and bet sizing, and
Right.
ranges, and everything. So it's a very, very complex game, and I love it because I'm a competitive person, and so that keeps my competitive juices flowing. Because obviously in Christianity, we're to be loving everybody, and serving
Sure.
everybody, helping everybody, and so it keeps, like I say, those competitive juices flowing. But yeah, when it comes to Christians, I'm honest with it and share what I'm doing. So I don't lead with that with everybody, but just
Right.
being honest. I mean, you know, not everybody needs to know, but uh, my whole church knows, and they know that it's also been a great ministry opportunity for me as well, just to share my faith. That initial group of people I was talking about, like that bar league, in some ways that became like a second church for us as we planted the other church, because I was developing relationships and help do counseling with people. I've done did a wedding. I've done um, funeral stuff. Been there as family members were getting ready to pass away, et cetera, et cetera. Again, a lot of counseling for various things. And so that's been pretty cool, and that's how that started. And then with my relationship with Drew, and then with Alex Fitzgerald, the Assassinato, for those of you who know him, they both coach so many people, and they're both followers. And through the
I know
years,
that about Assassinato.
yeah, he would admit that his Christianity can be sort of up and down.
Sure.
But he and I first met. He was still living in Costa Rica, and Lisa and I have been to Costa Rica when we celebrated our 20th wedding anniversary. We spent a couple weeks down there, and actually got together with Alex while we were down there. But yeah, it's hard because Costa Rica is mainly Catholic for any type of Christianity, and so he didn't have a church. So it was pretty cool when he and I were talking a lot more. Just the influence on him. I'd hear sometimes in his podcast, he'd say, well, my pastor says. I'd be like, oh, okay, I knew that. Yes, that's me. But anyway, but they would get questions from people all around the world. And so they would say, hey, let me introduce you to my friend Gilbert. And so I've done Skype calls and various things with guys in Russia and Switzerland and Australia. I mean, just all over the world that had questions about, Christianity. And so that's been a pretty cool opportunity. There's a guy, I don't know, do you know who Craig Rochelle is? Pastors Life Church?
Yeah.
Yep. For those that may be listening, Life Church is now the largest church in the United States. But he says a thing that in order to reach people that nobody else is reaching, you must be willing to do things that nobody else is willing to do. And by reach, what he means is, as followers of Jesus, we don't think that we're better than other people, but what we believe is that Jesus really did die on the cross, and Jesus really did rise again from the dead, and Jesus really does want to forgive you of your sin. And I know for myself, I didn't become a Christian until my early 20s. I remember what it was like to live for the devil. And then I discovered this amazing offer that Jesus was given to me to give me a brand new life and a fresh start. And I accepted that, and life has never, ever been the same. And I have a friend that says that, we're just beggars who are telling other beggars where we found bread. So again, we're not better than other people. We're just saying, here's what we've experienced, here's what we've accepted, and we want the same for you. If you want it, great. If you don't, you have free will, you have free choice. But anyway, so as Christians, we do believe that that's part of our responsibility, is to just share with other people the good news that we've experienced. It'd be like, if you have the cure for cancer, you wouldn't keep that to yourself. You would go out and share that with everybody that you can. And we believe that better than the cure for cancer. We believe that we have the cure for sin and to gain eternal life. And so that's what I meant by, going out and reaching people. And so, unfortunately, what a lot of Christians do, because that's very uncomfortable to share their faith, and rightfully so, because people be like, oh, what if somebody asks a question, I don't know how to answer, or whatever. But most Christians that do try to share their faith, they go after sort of the low-hanging fruit of people that are like spiritually hungry and they just need a little bit of direction. But who's going after the hardcore, atheists and people like that? Because that's where Craig Rochelle says to reach people that nobody else is willing to reach. You got to be willing to do things nobody else is willing to do. And so for me, not only does poker provide a good income, but it's also an opportunity to reach some people that may never have heard the gospel otherwise.
Yeah, one of the things I love about poker, as I've talked to my Christian friends about things, is like nowadays, if you walk into a Walmart and you start a conversation with somebody, you can get maybe two questions in, or maybe like 30 seconds of conversation before it kind of gets to that awkward, uncomfortable, why are you talking to me? You're a stranger. Like, it's not like a long time ago where strangers just normally had conversations. So, like, people get very leery these days. So, like, you like to have a casual conversation with somebody, you don't really get very far. But in a poker room, in a poker table, poker tournament, like, people will tell you their life story without having any clue who you are.
Right.
I can remember when I was in Cherokee last fall, I was sitting down and this guy's just talking to me and he's asking me all these questions and like he's telling me about his life story a little bit. And then like somebody at the table recognized me, like, you're a poker pastor. And the guy asked me, like, wait, you're a pastor? And I said, well, I do ministry with poker players and that's kind of my thing in my church. And he got real quiet for about 2 minutes. And then like after that 2 minutes, he started telling me about his bachelorette parties and like, at his wedding, and he had like strippers and his thing, and like, it was cool to me that, like, obviously, well, not the stripper, but like, it was cool that he was so comfortable, that he was so open, like so willing to talk, and he didn't feel this like, oh God, I gotta be somebody I'm not. He felt like he could be himself around me, and you just don't get that. I was about to say in the real world again, you don't get that like in public in general. Like, it's just that those social cues aren't there. So I love that in poker that you get to be so real with each other and people are so willing to be real and open, because I think there's a lot of great personalities in poker that we wouldn't get to meet otherwise.
Right. Yeah. And again, as I said earlier, that I don't lead Christians that I'm a poker player. I don't lead with poker players and I'm a Christian necessarily.
Yeah.
Because just even that label, and then adding on top of that label that I'm a pastor, people just naturally want to put a wall up, and I'm just a normal person. Again, I'm just one beggar who discovered where to find bread, and so I want people to get to know me first, and because if not, then you become that person that people complain about. Oh, you're just trying to shove religion down my throat. Well, I don't want to shove anything down your throat. Again, I'm just sharing with you what I've experienced, and hopefully you experience the same thing.
Right. So have you experienced any adversity from peers in ministry, or different higher ups, or like have you run into any opposition for what you do?
Yeah. So True back in 2000. Oh, it was 2015. Yeah, interesting story with that real quick. Lisa and I, again, we celebrate our 20th anniversary weeks, and I caught some sort of nasty virus down there. And literally the last week that we were there, I just laid in bed the whole time, came home, and I was like deathly ill. Like for the next couple of weeks after that, I lost, I'm not a big guy, but I lost like a ton of weight. I could actually take my fingers and put it around my thigh.
Oh, wow.
That's how skinny I got. And, it was not a good thing. And so that was June of 2015. And then in July of 2015, I had my first $30,000 month. And Drew had just like, right before that, had been saying about, oh, wouldn't it be cool if somebody got a $30,000 month? I forget what the exact thing was. But anyway, I ended up doing it. He said, oh, I'm going to write an article about you. And so on his blog, he writes this article. And so I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. I'll put it out on my Facebook wall as well. And because I sort of kept the Twitter side for the poker, and then the Facebook side is for life and church.
Yeah.
But it was about poker, but yet it was also just, about my faith and et cetera, et cetera. So I was like, oh, I'll push that one there. And I got a call to the principal's office, so to speak, by one denomination higher up that, what in the world are you doing? But again, when I explained it to him that you know, that it's a, calculated risk and the skill element and et cetera, et cetera. And I have, ways that I usually easily explain that to people.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, okay, I understand. And so that was sort of the end of that. But I get more flack from Christians about it than I do poker players, because you would think, sometimes the poker players be like, what's this Christian doing here, blah, blah, blah. But poker players are cool with it. They're like, oh, that's pretty cool. We didn't know the pastors were allowed to do that. Whereas again, the Christians
let's talk about that a little bit, because I think one of the things I run into, like, I don't think people have near as much of a trouble with the idea of Christianity as they do with Christians. A lot of people have had terrible experiences with Christians or terrible experiences with churches. Like, when you're a pastor in Harrisburg, and you guys do a lot of outreach and community things and whatnot, but as you run across people who are like, they come to you and they're like, well, I've been to church, or I've experienced you Christian. Like, when they've got that mentality, they've dealt with those struggles. Like, how do you describe, like, it's kind of where you almost have to, like, differentiate yourself from it, but at the same time, you're still a part of it. So, like, how do you talk about that? Like, how do you define real Christianity or real faith compared to maybe some of the horrible experiences that people have had?
Well, a lot of times will apologize to them for the experience that they had, because obviously the person that hurt them wasn't treating them the way Jesus wanted them to be treated. And so the big argument that people have, and what you're expressing there, is people say, well, I don't want to go to church or Christian because church is just full of a bunch of hypocrites. If I'm joking, if I sort of know the person, I'll say to them, well, we have room for one more.
Yeah, you kind of got to know him to say that.
Right. Yeah, I don't lead with that one, but anyway. And so if I don't know them, I just let them realize, or help them to try to realize, that it doesn't matter where you go, you're going to come across hypocrites. You can go to the bar and there's going to be hypocrites there, but that doesn't keep a lot of people from going to the bar. Because you're at the bar for other reasons. You may have other friends there, or maybe you're going for, the drinks and the buzz or whatever that you want to get out of it. And so you don't do away with the whole thing just because one person hurt you. Yeah. And I say that same thing with restaurants. If you go out to a restaurant and you have a bad experience, you don't say, I'm never again eating at a restaurant. You may not eat at that restaurant, but you're still going to go to restaurants. So just because you say, oh, I went to church and I had a bad experience, well, you had a bad experience at that church. There are churches and no church, let me just be clear, no church, my church included, is perfect. And there's no, one of our taglines at Exponential Church, which is the church that I pastor, is that no perfect people are allowed. And that begins with me. I am, a follower of Jesus since July 27th of 93, so a little over. I'm not perfect. I may be a step or two further down the journey than others. And so, my job is just to sort of reach behind and sort of pull people up. And then I still have people in my life that are pulling me up to their level. And I think we need to do that in all areas of life, not just Christianity, with poker. You need to have somebody that's coaching you, somebody that's helping you to get up to their level. But then the best way for you to learn and to grow is to coach other people. Because you learn far more when you're helping others than when you're just trying to sit there and help yourself.
Yeah, we've talked about that on a couple different interviews. Actually, it's been really cool. That's kind of been that the up level, the lateral level, and then pouring into people and how valuable it is a really good thing. One of the things that I tell people sometimes, it gets me kind of a raised eyebrow, is I always talk about how, for me, poker's made me a better Christian, and Christianity has made me a better poker player. And there's actually like a lot of really cool similarities between the two. They both can teach you a lot about life. I mean, life has just as many bad beats as poker does, right? Like sometimes in life we set everything up well, we have great intentions, and things fall apart. So what kind of things have you learned from poker that's kind of helped you in faith? What kind of things have you learned from faith that's helped you be better at poker?
Right. So the first one was before I became a follower of I had a really bad temper problem, and just the peace that my faith gives me helps me, because if this would have been the old me in playing poker. Some of the times when you're going through downswings and the variance, I would have broken all kinds of mice and laptops and all kinds of stuff. I'd have been throwing things across the room.
Right.
That was the old me. So just the peace that I have, and just the thing of knowing that in the grand scheme of life, a bad beat doesn't really matter. I just got back, actually, it's been almost 6 months ago, but we go down to Haiti in March every year and serve the people down there. Haiti's the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, and the average person lives on $1.78 per day. Think about that, $1.78 per day. And, you go down there and you see things that you're just like, wow, this is just not right that this is happening in this world. And so, again, it's hard to come back and complain about a poker game because you've seen what real hardship, looks like. So that's been a thing, is that my faith helps me in my poker game from a tilt standpoint. And then poker's helped me in life from, as you were mentioning, just becoming more familiar with variance. And the reason I say that is I was very, very fortunate that I started my first business when I was 16, my second business when I was 20, and both of those did really, really well. I was in my early 20s and we were making a very good income. Lisa and I, had already got married. We're just young, snot-nosed kids and, have the world by the tail. And that happened. And then I became a pastor, and the first I pastored, had great success there. And then, do you know who Rick Warren is?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So in 2002, I had an idea that Rick Warren and Purpose Driven Ministries, which is the ministry that trains churches throughout the world, I had an idea that they liked, and so they hired me to do it. And so for 3.5 years, I got to travel all over the United States and Canada, trained over 10,000 churches, 30,000 church pastors. So, I mean, I was, making this exponential impact. That's why we're called Exponential Church, because I saw what impact that a couple-year period had. So I was doing that. So that was great success. And then after that, I thought I'd go and staff in another big mega church somewhere. But instead, I ended up at a little small church in the south central part of Pennsylvania. And make a long story short with that, we experienced explosive growth. The church went from 300 or so. When I first got there, I helped them to get a contemporary service started. We went in the contemporary service from 52 the first weekend I was there to 550 within a 2-year period. The church itself, eclipsed over 1,000. We built a new big building. The church now, to this day, I think they're like maybe 1,800 or so. So, that was great success. And then we moved here to Harrisburg to start a new church. And for, that was 8 years ago. So I'm 45, so I was 37 at the time. So from 16 to 37, I had a 21-year heater, basically, that everything I touched sort of turned to gold. And this church plan has been the toughest thing I've ever done. We have been up and down and all over the place with it. And this would have killed, even as a follower of Jesus, this type of up and down would have really just destroyed me many years ago. But what poker's done is taught me variance. And so I've been able to keep a lot more level with the whole thing and just say, hey, it's in God's timing, and we continue to make the right decisions, do the right things, and the quote unquote success, whatever that may or may not look like for a church, that will come. So that's been a really, really helpful thing. And again, that's the hardest part, I think, for people to understand about poker is you can learn the math, you can learn the ranges, you can do all that. It's the self-control of bankroll management, and it's the self-control of keeping off a tilt when variance comes. That's going to be the key of whether you're going to be a long-term winning or losing player. Because if you're winning most of the time, but then you just tilt off your whole roll every time you experience a bad beat, then that's not gonna work for you. So yeah, like I say, just learning about variance. And again, it's so weird with variance because you can continue to make the over and over and over and over again and just keep getting bad beated. And there's really nothing else in life that's like that. You know, usually you make the right decision, and you're going to get rewarded for it. So, like I say, this has been one of those things of starting the church that, yeah, we've keep doing the right things, and we just keep experiencing some bad beats, but yeah, we just keep going.
Yeah. So I'm going to apologize in advance for this next question because it's putting you on the spot a little bit, but I've heard you answer this question, so I know you have a good answer for it already. And being a pastor, you're probably comfortable being in these spots anyway. So, but one of the funny questions I always get asked at the tables from people that are, and mostly they're just trolling or trying to be funny, but they'll be like, "Oh, so is God going to help you win because you play poker and you're a poker pastor, and He's going to change the cards for you, or you're going to pray that He, you know?" And there's a part of those questions that I feel like there's a little bit of truth behind of this fascination of like, well, if there is a God, then how much control does He have over things? I mean, we obviously live in a world today where you can turn the news on and we can just see horrible things happening to people and horrible examples of leadership, and you know, I think it's hard for a lot of people in a world where there is so much good and so much evil to really like ascertain like, well, you know, come on, I mean, if this whole God thing really exists, then why is there a Haiti where people are surviving off $1.82 a year? Why is there people who get cancer and die at a young age who lived their lives well and treated people good and they were good-hearted people? Like, how does God fit into any of this? And so, like, talk a little bit about that, and kind of your take on that, because I've heard it and I really like your approach to it.
So, first question was, does God change the cards on our behalf? And the answer is God couldn't care less about a poker game or an NFL, anything like that, because there are other things going on in the world. The other thing, as far as, you know, why is there suffering in the world? The reason that there's suffering in the world is because there's sin in the world. And that's why Jesus came. Jesus is God in the flesh, and He came to give us the long-term solution to that. But just because there's a long-term solution doesn't mean that there's not still going to be some short-term consequences. You know, you love your kids, I'm sure, and you try to lead them in the best way that you can, but they don't always listen to you. And even when they do things wrong, even if you try to rush in to fix it, sometimes there's still going to be consequences for those actions. And that's the world that we live in. We live in a sinful, fallen world. And suffering, unfortunately, is a part of that. But again, ultimately, God, through Jesus, has provided us the eternal one-outer. You know, that it looks like we deserve hell. It looks like eternally punished, but that miracle river card came for us on the cross. I'm really mixing my metaphors now.
No, that's okay.
But yeah, so here's the thing with that. Let's say that in 2019, the first day of the year is absolutely miserable for you. You know, just you lose your job and down, and the washer breaks down, and you know your best friend from high school passes away, whatever. So January 1st, 2019, just a horrible day. But then let's imagine that the other 364 days of the year were just absolutely perfect. I mean, nothing went wrong the other 364 days of the year. When you got to the end of the year and people said, "Hey, how was your year?" You go, "Wow, it was great." And they'd be like, "Well, wait a second, didn't the first day of the year, didn't your washing machine break down, your car broke down, your best friend from high school?" And you're like, "Yeah, but in the totality of everything, this turned out to be a really great year." And what we need to understand is, even if we live to be 100 or 110 years old here on this earth, our life is still very, very short when you compare it to the span of all of eternity. I mean, eternity is eternal. That's why it's called eternity, right? That's a long time. And so even if you spent all 100 years of your life here on the earth in suffering, if you're a follower of Jesus and you do have eternal life with Him, when you're in heaven for the 10 millionth, 784,000th 653rd consecutive days of just pure bliss. There's no more sin, no more sickness, no more disease, no more death. If somebody came up to you and said, hey, how has your existence been so far? You'd be like, this has been fantastic. And they're going to be like, but wait a second, that 100 years that you spent on the earth, didn't you suffer? And you'd be like, oh, I forgot all about that. Because again, it's such a short span in the midst of the big span. I mean, it'd be like, trying to watch what hand you're in right now. But, in this hand here on carbon on the right-hand side, if you get bad beaded on that one, is that going to define your entire poker career? No, your entire poker career is going to be determined by, all the hands that you played, not just one hand.
Sure.
And so, again, it's about keeping an eternal perspective instead of just the here and the now all the time.
Yeah, for sure. Did that question intimidate you?
No.
Okay. So you've talked a little bit about like the whole eternal thing and whatnot. Like how do I want to phrase this? Another one of the questions I get a lot of times is, what is the purpose of hell? How do you again, as a pastor, as somebody who is interacting in these bar leagues, these things kind of come up from time to time. How do you approach that topic? I have a kind of a unique perceptive. I don't want to say I'm in a minority camp, but I'm in an interesting camp. So I'm just curious where you're at on the whole purpose of hell. And people are always like, well, why do good people just carry on?
Right. So, what is the purpose of hell? The purpose of hell is eternal punishment for Satan. I think Tom and Jerry, I love Tom and Jerry, kid watching, the cartoon. I think it wrecked us in some ways, because if you remember the way they depicted the devil in that was that the devil was the leader of hell. And we've sort of brought that into our mindset that we think, and you'll hear people, anything to do with Jesus because I'm going to go party with the devil down in hell, and stuff. Well, what they don't realize is that, again, hell was designed as Satan's punishment. And the other thing people don't realize, maybe if you haven't read the Bible or haven't heard a lot about it, is that Satan was actually the worship leader. He was an angel, and he was the worship leader, basically. And he eventually got to the place he's like, instead of worshiping God, I want people to worship me. And he convinced a third of all the angels to follow him. And that's been his thing ever since. And God said, there will be no redemption for you. This will be your punishment. And so basically Satan, for all of eternity now, of humankind that is, has been trying to say, you know what, if I can't spend eternity with God, then I'm going to make sure that other people can't spend eternity with God. And Jesus said it this way, that Satan came to steal, to kill, and destroy your life. And so you're not partners with him. He wants to destroy you. And so hell was designed as his punishment. And so basically we've got to decide, are we Team Jesus or are we Team Satan? And those that choose to be Team Satan will suffer his consequence. But here's the thing about hell. God's desire is that none should perish. And he has provided a way out of that. And nobody will end up in hell and say, oh, I'm surprised I'm here. Because we all know, whether all of us know that we have a sinfulness, whether you call it sin or not. We all know that we haven't been perfect, and that we need some way for that wrongness, that we would call it sinfulness, to be forgiven. And again, that's what Jesus did. And just to, I didn't want to get preachy, but
sorry.
That's the good news, though, is that God loved us so that Jesus, who is God in the flesh, came to the earth, took on human flesh and blood, lived the perfect and sinless life that you and I could never live, and then he died on the cross for. And so he shed his blood for the forgiveness of our sin so that we don't have to shed our blood eternally in hell. And what's cool is you don't have to earn that gift. You don't have to work for it in any way. It's simply a matter of faith of saying, I'm a sinner. I've messed up. I can't do anything about it. So, Jesus, I need your forgiveness. I need your leadership in my life. And that's the part where we were talking earlier about like hypocrites. And I talked about this in my sermon yesterday, that a lot of people love the idea of Jesus as Savior, of, save me of my sins, my get out of hell free card. But they don't like the Lord part of it, which Lord just means to make him the leader of your life, to say, look, you're not my lieutenant. No, I'm your lieutenant because you're the general. You're the commanding officer, and I'm going to do whatever it is you want me to do. I'm going to say whatever it is you want me to go. And that's where a lot of people get messed up, because they want, again, the benefits of Jesus without the things that Jesus asks us to do. And what Jesus asks us to do is to lay down our life for other people in the same way he laid down his life for us. So that he says, the last shall be first and the first shall be last. And he said, I didn't come to be served. I came to serve other people. And he said, I came to lay down my life for others. And as followers of Jesus, we're to become more like Jesus. And so that's what we're supposed to do, is to lay down our lives for the sake of others. But that's not how most people live. Most people live very selfishly. Instead of the Trinity of, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, for many people, the Trinity is me, myself, and I. It's about what's in it for me, more. I give. And that's a very selfish way to live. And the literal definition of Christianity then would be the exact opposite of that it's selflessness, not selfishness. And that's just hard for a lot of people to do, to say, you know what, I'm going to give up my whole life because I believe that God has a better plan for me than what I even have for myself. So I forget how we even got into that, but anyway, with the whole thing of Jesus offers us forgiveness of our sin, just simply by asking for it and saying, all right, and I'm now going to die to the old me. And so on July 27th, 1993, when I prayed and asked Jesus to forgive me of my sin, not only did I ask him to forgive me of my sin, I said, I'm giving up the old Gilbert. And the guy that woke up the next day looked like, just as ugly, but he woke up looking the same, but inside I was different, because now I got Spirit living inside of me. And again, I haven't been perfect walking that out, but every day my goal is to say, what can I do to serve and to help others? Right. And be a blessing to as many people as I possibly can. And so what I said yesterday in the sermon is this: if I come to your door, tonight I ring the doorbell, you can't open up the door and go, oh, come on in, Gilbert, but stay out thirsting. I'd be like, what? Because I'm 100% Gilbert, but yet I'm also 100% a Thurston as well. And so the result is I would stay out because I wouldn't know what to do. And so you can't say, well, I want Jesus as Savior, but I don't want him as Lord. Now, again, that doesn't mean that we have to earn our way or, work our way for our salvation. But it does mean that if you've truly prayed and asked for his forgiveness, you've asked for his leadership in your life, there'll be a difference that other people are able to see in your life. That, wait, something has changed about you. The Bible calls it fruit. And Jesus said, by their fruit, you will know them. And that's why I don't allow people to call me pastor. I'm just Gilbert. And one of the reasons I do that is I say, an apple tree doesn't need a sign on it that says, I'm an apple tree. How do you know it's an apple tree? Because it's got apples on it. How do you know that an orange tree is an orange tree? Because it has oranges on it. Well, how do you know a true Christian? Well, you'll know the Christians by their love for one another and by their love for the people of the world.
Right. So let's get practical for a second. Like, poker players are people who understand value. Like, value is a big thing. Like, you put X in, you want to get Y out. If Y is more than X, then you've made a good, it's a good value decision. If Y is less than X, you've made a bad value decision. And again, circumstances can change. The river card can change things, whatever. I get cracked up when you get into your poker life analogies, because that's like 90% of my conversations with Drew. And like we used to fight it, and now we're just like, we're like used to it. It's just like, hey man, how's life going? Well, like today it's kind of like a 3-hour day. Like we've just adapted it into our communication style. But just practically speaking, right? Like what value comes from being a Christian? What value comes from being a part of a church? What value comes from being around those people? I think everybody kind of knows the story of like Jesus, and I mean we've all had our Easter Sunday services or whatever, like the basic. But just like practically speaking, what value comes from being a Christian that you don't have from not being one, that maybe helps you in the day-to-day life or the week-to-week life or so on and so forth?
Right. So the biggest thing is that Jesus, and here's the funny thing, because Jesus, after his resurrection, he spends 40 days walking the earth, proving himself to over 500 people that he truly was alive. But then he says, look, guys, it's better for you if I go back to heaven and then send my spirit to come and live inside of you. And, some people are like, man, it'd be so much better if like Jesus was still walking the earth. It'd be easier for me to believe. But the way I've often described that is then it'd be like, we'd all be walking around with our Jesus Christ World Tour t-shirts on. And like on the back would have all the cities, like it's a Guns N' Roses thing or something, right? Of all the tour dates. And we would think, oh, the only time I can like have a relationship with Jesus is when he's in my particular city. But even then, if you show up and it's, a crowd of 50,000 people in an arena, you still don't have a relationship with him. He's just a guy on a stage. And so he says, look, it's better if I go back to heaven, send my spirit to come in and live inside of you. And so that's the promise, is that when we become a follower of Jesus, at that moment of salvation, his spirit now lives inside of us. And the spirit doesn't, like, we're not possessed, we still have free will, free choice, but the spirit is in there as a guide. So that when I come to those forks in the road of, do I do the right thing? Do I do the wrong thing? The spirit is giving me, here's what you need to do the right thing. Now, whether I obey that or not, that's still up to me, because again, we have free choice. But that's the big thing, because there's a lot of things that I'm just a dumb guy that I would get myself in trouble with if it wasn't for the spirit going, don't do this, or, you should do that. And oh yeah, and again, it's all about just laying your life down for others. And because our natural instinct, our sinful nature doesn't want to go that way all the time. Again, it's just so much easier to have the spirit there helping you. So here's what's cool about that. Have you ever used like a pneumatic like jackhammer?
No.
Or okay? I mean, you've seen them though, like on the roads.
Yeah.
With the construction workers. From what I understand, those things are like 80 pounds or so, and it's interesting because they're holding on to it, and that word pneumatic means air, right? So they hook it up to an air compressor and they hold on to the thing, they turn the compressor on, and it starts like, right, jumping up and down, jumping up and down, jumping up and down. And that's what breaks up the concrete. And it's so much easier than if they were unplugged from the air supply and they were manually lifting it up and throwing it down, lifting it up, throwing it down, lifting. Number one, they would get tired really, really fast. And then number two, they would, not be as effective, because it would be their own human strength trying to throw it onto the concrete instead of the air that's helping them along. So what's interesting, and you know this, but maybe a lot of your people here in chat don't. In the Greek, the word pneuma is actually used. The same Greek word that we get pneumatic from, that we translate as air. But in Scripture, every time you see the word pneuma, it's spirit. And so literally what God's spirit in us is doing is the same thing I was talking about with the jackhammer. I can go through and try to do life on my own, but that's like picking it up and throwing it down, picking it up, throwing it down. I can do it, but I'm going to get tired and I'm not going to be effective. But when God's spirit lives inside of us, then we have an effectiveness and a power that is not our own. And as Spider-Man would say, or maybe it was his grandma, or not, aunt. What was her name?
Aunt. Chad will know in 2.5 minutes.
Yeah. Anyway, the saying was, with great power comes great responsibility. And again, that's what we do or we're supposed to do as Christians, is to say, hey, we have been forgiven, and now we have a responsibility to go out and just love and serve the world. But again, unfortunately, even Christians, many times, it's still all about themselves. And that's not Jesus' plan at all. And that's what leads back to our original thing of, why is there so many hypocrites in the church? Well, because they haven't gotten fully on board with the plan.
Yeah. One of the cool things to talk about, and if you're like in chat and you're just like, I'm not into this Jesus thing or this faith thing, it's no worries. We're not like, there's no pressure here tonight. You can think of these as goodwill stories if you're in that camp. If you are kind of interested in faith or you take faith seriously, then you can kind of consider these like powerful moments. But I always love to hear from people kind of some of their most powerful moments. And I'll give you one of mine because I've been like hounding you for stuff and it's only fair.
Sure.
The last nonprofit I was at, I'm bringing this up actually because you were talking about Haiti. It was a resale shop, a Christian resale shop where it was kind of like a Goodwill. And the proceeds from that went to a lot of positive ministry type things. We actually had a shelter for battered and beaten women. We did a lot of domestic violence stuff. But we also helped out with the local ministries and just different campaigns. And one of the things we did is we worked with a couple of missionaries in Haiti. And they had come back to the States for a while. They were doing some, fundraising and whatever. And they came through the store and were just like, hey, come through the store. Whatever you guys need, you can take. We're not going to charge you for it. If there's supplies you need, whatever, feel free. And they were like, well, honestly, they said the only thing we really need is we need kids' sandals because we have a lot of kids that are running around barefoot. It's hot. They don't want to wear shoes, and we just don't have any sandals. And we looked through, and literally we didn't have a single pair of kids' sandals in the store. And I'm like, I'm sorry. Like, we just, it's like May, right? So like if there was sandals, they're going to get snatched up. Nobody wants to donate sandals in May because, it's that time of year. I was like, we just don't have any, but we'll keep an eye out. Maybe, 4 or 5 months down the road, we'll have some and we'll send them your way. And they're like, yeah, no worries. And so the very next day, it was a Saturday morning, I'm sitting on the dock where we take, people drop off donations and stuff. And this is a small town of like 5,000 people. Monticello is a really, really small town. It's not a massive community. We are kind of close to some bigger communities, but, kind of your small town feel and vibe. And this old couple pulls up in a truck and they're like, can we talk to you? I said, yeah, sure. They said, this is kind of a weird request. We have something we want to donate, but we just don't know if you'll take it. And I'm like, I get nervous when I get that when I'm working at a resale shop because people will try to drop off their like dirty couches that are like stained and smell like cat pee and everything else. So I'm like, that's always a loaded question. So I'm like, well, let me hear what you have to say. And they literally opened the back of the trunk and they're like, we just stumbled into an auction and purchased 60 new pairs of kids sandals in like 20 different colors. Is there any way you'll take this? And I literally broke down crying. I'm trying not to do it now on the spot because I was just like, how in the heck does this happen? In a little town in the middle of nowhere, these missionaries have this need. These people have no idea. They stumble in an auction. How do you even buy 60 pairs of new colorful kids sandals and then have the design? I mean, it was unbelievable. And it was just so cool. And then we got to call the missionaries like, you're not going to believe what happened. And then, they sent pictures of all these kids running around in purple and pink and yellow and green sandals that they've never worn before. Like they'd never owned a pair of sandals. They'd never owned a pair of shoes. It was just a really awesome, powerful moment. So that's mine. Tell me one of your just really, really cool stories from your experiences in life.
You're talking about just when you know that you know that you know that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of different things. I think, one of the most recent was when we moved here to Harrisburg to get the church started. We actually met in a movie theater for the first 5.5 years or so. And in the midst of, getting the church up and running, we were always on the lookout for a place to either buy or lease or whatever that we call our own. Because, when you're at the movie theater, we would get there at 7 o'clock in the morning. We set up. The church service would start at 10. We go to 11:10, and then we were supposed to be out of the building by 11:40 because movies have to start. So it's just set up, tear down, set up, tear down, week after week. 5.5 years that we did that. So we were looking for a permanent place to call our own, and we came across a lead for a building in the sort of the neighborhood area that we wanted to be. And we found out that we could get a really good deal for it. Now, to backtrack a little bit, we had looked at another church like 2 years before that. It was a smaller church, and they said, hey, we're just a small church. If you'd like, you could utilize our basement. And so we went and looked at it, and they said, you can do renovations, whatever. And so we were like, okay, we could probably put like 30,000 into renovating this, and what we would need. And they were willing to put 30,000 into it. Well, we had a contractor come out to give us an actual quote. Then it was going to be $153,200 in order to renovate this thing. And I'm like, we're not spending $153,200 on a building. And so we kept looking. And so again, fast forward 2 years later, this property comes up. It's 10,000 square foot building, house on the property. It's 1,300 square feet plus 2.9 acres of land. And it should have gone for like maybe $700,000 or so dollars. But the previous church that was leaving, their denominations, we just want to try to bless you guys. And just basically, we know that the building itself is going to need a lot of renovations, the church building, that is. So if we can get the value of the house, then we'll basically throw in the church part for free. And so right away, that's like, wow, this is really good. Mm-hmm. So I had a realtor come out to give us an estimate. They said, well, it's probably, they could probably sell it for 170 to 180,000. And I get a call from that particular guy that was selling it, their denomination, saying offer came in, and we'd much rather you guys have it than the other people. But they put a 72-hour contingency on this. And so we need to know by Monday at noontime what you guys would offer for this. So I talked to our church leadership about it, and I said, look, we've been looking for years and years to try to find something in this particular neighborhood, and I don't want to like nickel and dime on this and potentially lose out on it. So I'd actually rather offer higher than the 175 to 180 that the realtor said. That way we almost guarantee that we get it, because we knew that the other group had lowballed them with a previous offer, and that they were coming back with a more quote unquote reasonable offer. So I was like, as long as we go over the appraised value, then it should be good to go. And so they said, all right, well, we'll authorize you to, up to $200,000. And so I went to bed on Sunday night, and I knew that we were supposed to make an offer, but I didn't have what it was supposed to be. And it was about 5 o'clock on Monday morning, and I'm like wide awake. And I'm like, I know what this is. This is God waking me up because he needs to talk to me. And so I'm like, again, it's 5 o'clock in the morning. I am not a morning. I'm like, yeah, God, what do you want? He's like, see, I told you so. And I was like, dude, it's 5 o'clock in the morning. You're going to have to be way more specific than, see, I told you so. What in the world do you mean? And he said, I told you that there was a better way to spend $153,200. I'm like, where in the world, $153,200? What in the world is that? And then all of a sudden it hit me. I was like, wait a second. Was that the number from that contractor from a couple years ago that we had gotten building? So our old house, we just moved to a new house here a month ago. But in our old house, our bedroom was in the basement, and then my home office was all the way out on the top floor. So I trudge all the way up, the steps and everything, and start filing or going through the filing cabinet and quote there somewhere. And I pull it out, and sure enough, it was $153,200. And I was like, that's not a number that you just pull out of your head.
Right.
This was definitely God speaking to me. And then all of a sudden it hits me. It's like, wait a second, God, are you saying that's the number we're supposed to offer? Because the appraised value is, 170, 175, whatever. We're willing to offer more. And now you're saying 153,000. That's what you need to offer. So at noontime on Monday, I put that offer in for $3,200, and they accepted it.
Wow.
Now we've put in about $200,000 now into renovations. It was really in bad shape. So it's like a little over $300,000 that we put into it. But when we got the latest assessment back, the property's now assessed at $1.389 million. Basically, God gave us $1 million discount.
Wow.
And we right there we saved $30,000-$40,000 just because I was willing to trust God that He was speaking to me.
That's cool.
That we just had to act in faith, even though it didn't make any sense.
Yeah, that's really cool. So, let me ask you this: I know, because I've worked in ministry in a variety of different places. Like, ministry's not a 40-hour-a-week job, right? Like it doesn't have a punch in time and a punch out time, and you're always on call. There's always things going on, and like I think that because of that, like it definitely is kind of a unique type of position compared to what other people are doing. But talk a little bit about just like what it's like for you to have this role of a pastor that can be 50, 60, 80, 100 hours a week sometimes, and you have a wife and a wonderful relationship that's gone over 20 years now. I don't know how long it's been since the 20-year anniversary, but it's been a little bit, right? You're balancing all that, and you've got this incredible poker career that you are doing. You're having a ton of success in, because I think for a lot of poker players, they get into these spots where like it's like, well, I would love to be good at poker, and I'd love to study, and I'd love to get better, and I'd love to but I don't have the time, and I've got a full-time job, and I got kids, and like they have all these reasons why they can't get there. And here you are, and one of the reasons I admire you is you've got all that on an exponential level, to use that word again, and yet you're still finding time to find success. Like talk through, like, first of all, just give people an idea of what a week is like in your shoes, and then talk through like some of the things you've learned that allow you to be successful in that type of environment.
Right. So, the joke is, as pastors, we only work 1 hour a week, and that's days. So it's a pretty good gig if you can get it. But as you accurately described, it's actually a lot more than that. There's a lot of flexibility so that I can sort of set my own hours. And you're right, typical week's 40, 50 hours that I put in. And if I know that I have an evening meeting, then start the day a little bit, later or whatever. But for the most part, it is and can be, a 9 to 5-ish type of thing. It's just like you said, you are always on call for things that may come up. Thankfully, we're a younger congregation, so I don't deal with, health things and various things that maybe other pastors deal with. So you're on call, and then there's some evening and types of things that you do as well. But we all get 168 hours in a week, and so even if I put in 60 hours, well, that still leaves me 100. That still leaves me 108 hours in a week. And as I don't sleep a whole lot. You and I've had that conversation before, and I can talk about that because I've got the tricks for that or whatever. But even if you're somebody that you're like, sleeping 8 hours a day, right? That's 56 hours in a week. So take that, what was I saying? If I work 60 hours and then with 8 hours, what are we down to? 52 hours that are still left over for other things. I mean, 52 hours, that's a lot of time. You've already worked 60 hours. You've already done 8 hours sleep a night, if that's what you need. You still got a ton of time. So here's sort of the lesson. We do what we give priority to. So a lot of people say, well, I don't have time to do this, or I don't have time. Well, no, you haven't made it a priority to do that. If something happens out of the ordinary in a week, for me, let's say, or now let's even use something else. Somebody that's watching, right? Their car breaks down. Well, the car breaking down, that's probably 2 hours out of your day that you weren't expecting, and then the next day you got to go into the shop and all. So you may have 4 or 5 hours in the week that you figured out how to get that done. Yeah. That had somebody asked you at the beginning of the week, hey, could you free up about 5 hours of your week to, in this case, study poker? No, man, I'm so busy. I don't ever have time. But yet somehow when it came time to get that car fixed, you figured out how to get those 5 hours in.
Right.
And so it's all about what we see as having importance. I heard somebody once say that, a lot of times I say I don't have time to vacuum my house, because it's very low priority. However, if they said, I'll pay you $100,000 to vacuum your house, or if you vacuum your house, I'll give you $100,000, you'd suddenly find time.
Make it happen. Yeah, for sure.
Right? And so, again, whether it's poker or anything else in life, we'll make time for what we see as a priority. So for me, my top priority is my relationship with God. And so I take time every single day to spend time with Him, reading His Word, praying, et cetera, et cetera. My second biggest priority then is to Lisa, my wife, 23 great years of marriage, spending time with her. And, even with that, there's a difference. There's quality time and then there's quantity time. Just, I see this all the time. People are like, oh, I'm spending time with my kids.
Right.
And the kids are playing there and they're on their. Well, that isn't what your kids are they're going to remember the quality times, not the, oh, dad spent 2 hours a night with us type of thing. So that God first, Lisa second, the church then, my ministry, that comes, next. That's the next priority. And so I'll put as much time into that as what I need to. And then, everything else sort of comes after that. So if I have time for poker, great. If I don't have time, that's fine as well. I don't have to play a certain amount of games or a certain amount of hours or, whatever. I do it because I enjoy it. And hey, I happen to make a good income doing it as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I'm going to open it up here in a little bit. I know some people in chat have some questions they want to ask you. And so I definitely want to give the opportunity to do that. So if you guys have questions, just tag me in chat and let me know what your question is. And then I'll kind of go through them one by one as we go here. So I'm prepping you guys now since you're on a 2.5 minute delay. But talk a little bit the whole money side of things. It's another one of those things that unfortunately, I view pastors a lot like teachers. I feel like they're underpaid, for the job that they do. And it's like, oh my gosh, if the pastor's making more than, $10,000 a year, we're paying him way too much. And of course, part of the reason for that is because we do have some really bad examples out there and I use the term very loosely, pastors, who are flying around on jets and they're making $10 million a year. And there's definitely some extremes that make it unhealthy, but how do you balance all of that? How do you balance the money side with, people saying, well, you shouldn't be making all this extra money. And, I'm sure there's that expectation of, oh, well, you should be giving all that to the church, or they're how do you reconcile all that with people and how do you just keep poker in a healthy mindset too of not turning it into that love of money?
Right. So the first question was from income side. You're right. I mean, if you're truly in ministry for the right reason, you're not in for the money. So I get my church is very generous with us, so I'm thankful for that. But my wife Lisa has some health problems, and she's self-employed, and so she does web design and graphics. Actually, cool. Bet on Drew's logo and stuff. She did that for him, and anyway, actually, she may have even done his whole website. But anyway, I just want to make sure that if she can't work for whatever reason, that she doesn't have to. So we can't do that just on my pastoral salary alone. So there does need to be other source of income. For me, it happens to be playing poker. But again, I treat it as a job. I treat it as a business.
Yeah.
So it's not just throwing money around, type of thing. It's again bankroll management, et cetera, doing the study, putting in the practice, doing the hand history reviews, et cetera, et cetera. It's all part of the cost of doing business, and so that comes from the time that's needed for that. And then there's coaching doesn't come free if you get coaching. Training sites, they don't just give their stuff out for free, or most of it they don't give out for free. But when I was self-employed and had businesses, the thing was you got to spend money to make money. And so that's how I've always seen it. It's an investment in myself, and it's an investment in our future.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. And it's cool because I think there is some precedent in the Bible for people who have, been able to acquire wealth and use wealth for some really positive, things in life. And it sucks that there are people out there who not tarnish the reputation, but they like break the mold, right? Like they go out and they just do these exorbitant things. And again, like it's almost like the 1%ers sometimes of like people that just they're out on such an extreme that they ruin it for everybody else, and they create this dynamic that's not realistic. And like again, it was like one of those things where like when I was a pastor, like back in the day, like I wanted to hide my income because I was making $28,000 a year as a youth pastor, which back then honestly wasn't terrible for what a youth pastor made, back in the early 2000s. But I was making, $60,000 a year playing poker. And so it was like, I was actually making, $88,000 a year. And so, you're a youth pastor and you buy a car, and people are like, how did you afford that on a $28,000 a year salary? And I'd be like, like it just brought me back to that same spot. But, I think it's really, so we has a question for you. He wants to know, I'm not entirely sure what the context is, but he's asking what the difference is between cash and MTTs, and if you have an interesting take on it. I'm assuming he's referring to the fact that when you're playing for cash, you're playing with money versus in MTTs being prizes. But I don't know. Maybe I'm reading into it too much. But
he may be referring back to that article that I've mentioned.
Oh, okay.
Wrote about me a couple years ago because I talked about that. So I don't play cash just simply because the ability to hurt somebody in a financial way is much greater there. Not that people can't get hurt in MTTs, but typically, what are you playing there? You're playing probably the nightly 15,
right,
or maybe the nightly 30. So that's a set buy-in. Most people go in knowing that, hey, I'm going to spend $15 tonight, or I'm going to spend 33. Now, obviously, do rebuy, and some people, unfortunately, do rebuy too much. But anyway, and in cash, it would be too easy to exploit somebody, and just they keep reloading, and just taking. I see somebody in chat there said something about taking somebody's rent money or something like that. That's not what we're trying to do here. And that's why, in addition to playing, I'm always trying to help people with bankroll management. So if I see somebody, even an MTT, that's firing more than what I think, and again, I try not to judge, but I'll probe a little bit. Just say, hey, what do you do for a living? It must be nice to be able to buy in this tournament.
Right, yeah.
Whatever. And privately then give some coaching on, hey, here's what bankroll management looks like, and help them to hopefully get that under control.
Yeah.
But yeah, and cash, you could just keep destroying people, and I don't want to do that.
Yeah, for sure. That makes sense. Yeah, it's funny because I've heard the logic too. It's like, oh, well, if you play poker, you're taking people's money, and it's horrible, and you shouldn't do that. And I'm like, think about all the things in life where that logic would be true. Like, if you work in a restaurant as a server and somebody comes in and they order a really unhealthy dessert and they're diabetic, well, you're potentially killing them. So now you can't work in restaurants. And if you work at Walmart and they sell tobacco products, you might be encouraging smoking. So now you can't work at Walmart. And like, you can just go on and on and on. I mean, it can get just absolutely ridiculous. You can sell baseball bats at Dick's Sporting Goods that people use to abuse their kids with. So you can't work at Dick's Sporting. That logic is so flawed because it leads into, everything is wrong. And of course, people that are asking those questions, like when it gets to that level, it's more about just trying to poke holes in people's logic than it is legitimately wanting to know the question. But I think, again, like I feel like nothing in life has only positive impacts. Like you're always going to have some positive and negative impacts of what we do because everything comes at a cost, right? Like, when we go out and we do good things for people and we sacrifice, it costs us time and energy. Like there's a negative side to it. And now the positive outweighs the negative, but there's always give and takes to it. And like being in the poker world, like I'd rather be in the poker world and be accessible to people, especially people that might not be comfortable walking into a church or might be not comfortable walking and talking to a typical pastor, than I would not being here. And so, yeah, can there be some negatives? Are there times where we run into people who are struggling with gambling or struggling with addiction? Absolutely. At the same time, where are those people going to go? right?
Right.
Like, you know, I mean, why wouldn't we want to be around people that are in those situations and be able to help them, like you said? So, like, I think
Right.
the good definitely outweighs the bad, and we just have to, you know, understand. I mean, even Jesus like got into some dicey situations. You know, he was
Right.
talking with tax collectors and prostitutes, and you know, my gosh, the gossip train that must have been going around back then. Like, why is Jesus
Right.
talking to this prostitute? What's he up to? What is his real reasoning? You know, and you know, but at the same time, you know, I mean, he had a very, very powerful purpose for doing so, and so,
Sure.
you know, it definitely works out. Maybe there's not going to be as many questions as I thought there were. I thought there were going to be a whole bunch of questions on this. People might be a little bit nervous yet too. They might open up after a couple.
I saw one come in that asked about Jesus at the temple. Actually, what happened there was the system for the Jewish people was to bring in sacrifices, depending on what their sin was, that they offered up to the priests. And the temple had become so corrupt that these, you know, say it was a pigeon or something that somebody was supposed to bring in for their sacrifice of their sin, they would bring it to the priest. And then what the priest was doing was he was offering that meat then to the vendors, and then they would sell it. So what was supposed to be God's was now they were making profit off of it. And so that's what Jesus got upset about the money changers there at the temple about, was that they were taking what was supposed to be God's and making it into a money-making scheme.
So here's a question that just came in, and I'm going to answer it from my side because me and Geek have had a little bit of a debate about this, and I'm curious where you're at. See, I'm putting you on the spot again because Geek's in chat now too. But I'm totally open to being wrong about this, or maybe taking it out of context, because we take things out of the Bible out of context all the time.
Sure.
But Big Man Mike asks, you know, thanks for talking about this subject. I'm still not sure, 100% sure if I should be playing poker as a follower of Jesus. And one of my staples is in the book of Romans when Paul is talking about how, you know, one person considers one food holy and sacred, another doesn't. One person considers one day sacred, another doesn't. And he stresses at the end, he's like, each of you do it to the fullest, do it for God, feel confident about doing it for God, but don't cause each other to stumble. So if you believe that, you know, drinking wine is okay, but your brother thinks it's not, you know, don't drink wine in front of him and cause him to stumble. And so, like, when it comes to poker and, like, should Christians be playing poker, the thing I always tell people is, like, if you consider yourself a believer, then you need to be asking God that yourself. And the answer for you might be different than the answer is for me, and it might be different than the answer is from everybody else. And you shouldn't take your answer and apply it to everybody else. Like, that's why it is a personal relationship. Like, that's something, obviously there's black and whites in the Bible that are really obvious, but you know, like with gambling or lightly drinking alcohol on occasion, or, you know, some of these other things, like vaping is a big one that's coming out. Like, there's nothing in the Bible about vaping. You know, what the heck? What do we figure out about the vape? You know, how do we go there? Like, I think there's these areas where, like, as a believer, if we believe it or a believer, we have a responsibility to ask God and let God guide us. But that doesn't mean we take that and pressure other people and put it on them. What are your thoughts on all this? How do you kind of approach these types of topics when it comes to these sorts of things, and answer his question, I guess?
Yeah, and so as you said, you know, that it is a thing that a lot of times we try to preach our own personal convictions and make that somebody else's conviction when the Bible has clearly stated that. And we got to be careful not to do that. And so when it comes to the whole issue of gambling, there is no thou shalt not gamble scripture. And so anytime there's nothing that's clearly black and white, then we got to look at principles of scripture and see, okay, is there a principle that would apply to this? And so as I studied it, for me, the big things, again, had to do with what we talked about earlier about loving people and stuff. So I don't want to hurt anybody. If people were playing it, and most of the people, you know, I'm a moderator in Drew's stream, and, you know, I hang out in your stream occasionally, Geek stream, Killingbird, you know, some of the other guys. From what I see, most of the people here, they're playing the $2 tournaments, $5 tournaments, $10 tournaments, and it's just entertainment. And, you know, if some guy goes out and spends $30 on a round of golf, nobody complains about that. It's just, hey, went out and did it. You know, you spend $10 on gardening tools or whatever because you want to have a garden. Nobody complains that you spent that money. So for a lot of the guys, again, in these streams that are just wanting to do the micros and have a good time and hang out, it's just how they choose to spend their entertainment dollars. And so there isn't anything against entertainment dollars. However, we are, as Christians, called to be good stewards of our money because we don't actually own anything. 100% of it all belongs to God. It's all His. And your house is His, your car is His, your paycheck is His, everything you own is His. And so you will give an account for how you spent His money. And again, there's nothing wrong with some of it being spent as entertainment dollars, but for those of us that actually do it to make a living, again, I do not spend even one single red cent on the lottery, on slots, craps, blackjack, you name it, because that is gambling, and that's being a bad steward of God's money because you're going to lose. Over time, you will lose. Now, again, if it's just an entertainment thing, you're at the casino, you do $5 in video poker and you're playing a penny or whatever, and you're going to spend that $5 on something else, and you see it as entertainment, great. But if your thing is you're playing these games in a large dollar amount, hoping that you're going to win, you're not. Oh, maybe in the short term, you'll win a little bit, but over time, you will lose that. And that's being a bad steward of God's money. Poker is a completely different game in that it's a game of skill. And as I've said numerous times, the amount of time that I study, the amount of time that I put in off the tables, and the way that I treat it as a business, it's probably less risky than when I started my other businesses, because with this one, I can study exactly what will make me a time.
Right.
And yeah, you can study market trends and things like that. But with poker, I know the exact percentages of this is the amount of percentage time I should win. Do I make this call? Do I fold? Or, do I put them all in? Do I not put them all in? And so to me, it's actually a more guaranteed way of making money than even something like the stock market or
right.
Other things that other people would have no problem doing.
Well, you certainly had a lot of success with it, so that definitely has a powerful impact. You mentioned competition at the beginning. You talked a little bit about coming from a competitive family, competitive nature, whatever. And I'm a super competitive person. I think part of the reason that poker hits my wheelhouse so well is because now that we're pushing into our 40s and life is getting into that age, we can't just go out and play basketball with the 20-year-olds anymore, and we still have that competitive edge. Like, how do you the word ambition, like, what is your poker ambition like? How do you kind of walk through that? I mean, obviously I think you've got a really balanced view in terms of why you're trying to make money in poker and how you use that money successfully for a lot of really, really cool things. But like, is there, when it comes to the competitive side, is there ambitious goals that you have? Do you put time and thought into like, oh man, like I would love to, win an OSS championship someday, or maybe I'd love to go play for a bracelet someday, or like, do any of those things come in, or is poker really just kind of a fun way for you to earn some extra income that opens the door for you to do all kinds of good things and positive things in your life?
Yeah, it's weird that at least I get motivated by some of the stupidest things. So while the money is really, really good, it's some of the other things that go along with it that has been very gratifying. And so that's where, like, when I first started playing and stuff, and online poker rankings, tracked, in this case, like Merge and Carbon and all the skins and stuff. My first year that I played Carbon, I was in the 99th percentile of players out of 100 and whatever, some thousand. You guys can look it up; it's still there. But
yeah, sadly, it's still there.
And so then, like the next year, instead of a financial goal, it was like, I just want to stay in that 99th percentile, right? And as you look at my OPR, like every year it went up. So like the final year that they tracked was 2015, I think it was.
Yeah.
I was in the 99.97th percentile. And that jacked me up, right? That was motivating. Now, again, it was good money that came along with it, but so there was that. And then like with pocket fives, uh, when I found pocket fives and I started climbing the rankings, in that, for me it was, hey, I'd like to one day become the #1 player in the state of Pennsylvania. And there was another guy that he and we were like probably in the 30s or so in the ranking. And we sort of came up at the same time, and we would flip flop. Like I'd get up to 27, he'd get to 26, and then I'd like jump him the next week, and we just kept going up, 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 right? And I'll never forget. I was actually at John's, or you guys know Miss Drew. I was at Drew's house, and the first time I got to #1 in Pennsylvania, and I ended up holding #1 in Pennsylvania for, it was like 16 consecutive months, I think it was.
Yeah.
And I climbed up to number 11 in the United States, and I was up into 800 and something in the world.
Wow.
Something like that. And so that was just like super, super motivating. Again, the money was just sort of a nice little side thing. The competitive juices was, can I get up higher in the rankings? And so that's why it sort of devastated me when Merge stopped having or allowing OPR and Shark Scope and finally Pocket Fives to stop tracking. So for anybody that reads my blog, you know that the reason that I started writing the blog on Pocket Fives was to just continue to track where I would have been. I think they stopped tracking me because then you got your 100,000K badge and you got 250K badge, I guess.
Yeah.
And they stopped tracking me. I was like at 360 or something like that.
We were in similar spots. I've got my 250K badge.
I was like, all right, I want to know where I would have been, So they stopped tracking me at 360, and this month or early next month I'll hit the K. So that stuff, just those stupid numbers,
keep you going.
So the outside thing is, when I hit the $1 million mark, that's the sort of next big thing in my mind for that. Yeah.
So you mentioned I don't remember, was it in the stream or what? You were talking about how you maybe play 5 tournaments a month, if that, on other sites. I asked Snost the same thing, because Snost is like almost 100% ACR. Like, so what's the reason behind that? Talk a little bit about why you're so exclusive to Carbon, and how that's worked for you.
Obviously, I had a lot of success, so you stick with what's successful, #1. But then #2, I just, even before all this, talk of bots and stuff came out about ACR and or any of the WPN skins, I just don't like their software. Just because I don't, and I'm actually sitting in my home. I'm going to get moved, so you can see my nice bookshelf here that hasn't even got any shelves on, much less books yet. But I'm actually sitting here in my home office, and so I got my laptop here. I got a big monitor, up here. But I don't use this setup for poker. I just play on I have another laptop that's my poker laptop. And the reason for that is a lot of times I'll be sitting with Lisa, we'll watch TV or whatever, and so I'm just casually, doing my side job and, spending some time with her, talking whatever, TV. And what was the question? I got off on that.
Just like why you're like so Carbon-centric, yeah.
So usually, because it's a like 17-inch monitor or whatever, it just, my eye sees the table a little bit better when I'm doing 4 or 5 than it does with the AC or the WPN skins.
Yeah.
That's part of it. I don't know. It just, the bigger field things. And I'll play, like, so when they were doing like $1 million guarantees and stuff, I would do those on occasion and stuff. But yeah, just the bigger field things, you have more variance. The thing with poker is your top 3 places are the to consistently be getting at in order to make good money. And when you're going through a field of 1,200 players, your chances are a lot less than 300 or 400 players.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
that's part of it.
So I want to be careful as I ask this question because like I've been watching you for a while, and I've been trying to dissect what you do, as all of us poker players do and whatnot. And I'm starting to pick up on a few things, but there's some very cool and unique and different things about your style that I think are somewhat secretive slash like not well known type things, and like I want to keep it that way, so I don't want you to like reveal your playbook or anything as I ask these questions. But I do know that there's definitely a group of people that come to Carbon and they fit right in and they do really well and they're successful there, and there's another group that like plays really successful on other sites and they come to the Carbon and they struggle. So what kind of, like, without giving away your playbook, like what kind of things do you think are keys to being successful on Carbon? If somebody's like starting to play over there, getting involved, like what are some basics as far as, you know, just how to play over there and approach some of the styles that you're going to see?
That's a good question. I never really thought of the fields being too different. Actually, I take that back. So that may be one of the. So when I play WPN, I don't use good bankroll management on there because I'm bankroll, and so I don't do bankroll management by skin.
Right.
I do it, you know, the overall thing. So what I find that I actually have trouble myself adapting to the poor quality players that are on ACR or WPN. That I outthink myself. You know, you should always be thinking one level higher than what your opponent is. But the mistake is when you think, you know, 2 steps higher, 3 steps higher, 4 steps higher, because there's this thing called the curse of knowledge that says that once you understand something and master it, it's hard for you to remember what it was like not to know that. And so a lot of times when we're dissecting a hand live in the moment, we're dissecting it of how are they going to react based on the way we would have played that hand. And what we always got to remember is we need to downshift to get on the level and the mentality of what that player is.
Right.
So the more of those bad players you have in a, say, a table, I think the harder it is. So actually, like when John used to, or Drew used to promote the DCI, right?
Yeah.
What was that? A $2.20 tournament
Right.
or something. And just for fun, because, you know, I was a moderator in chat and everything. All right, I'll fire up the WPN client and play this $2.20 tournament. You know, I probably only cash that thing like 5% of the time.
Yeah.
I couldn't beat the $2.20 players. But $33 players, the $109 players, the $102 players, I can beat them. So I think the overall, and that isn't to say that there are bad players on Merge, but there's more thinkers. And so I guess I do better against people that are thinking at the same level.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. How do I want to word this question? So, one of the things, and I don't want to exclude any women who are in the stream, and so maybe this is a question that's like both for both sexes or both genders at the same time, but separate. But one of the things I've loved about getting to know you or Drew or Geek or, you know, all of these friends that we've been making is there's a lot of power in being able to connect, and especially like for guys, like we need other guys in our lives. We need people that we can bounce things off with, you know, share our struggles, our challenges, things we're going through. And I think it's valuable both in and out of the poker world. I think it's valuable, obviously, in the poker world, you know, when we share hand histories and we talk about strategies and we think outside the box, but even more so, like, outside the poker world, like, obviously there's just, you know, there's things guys deal with, there's things girls deal with, we need that. So talk a little bit about like your support structure, the people that you're kind of lateral with. Like, I'm not like for names or anything, but just like some of the value you get from community and the friendships that you have, and why that's so important for success.
So overall, we all need community. We were designed for community. That's how wired us up, is that we need each other. And one of the problems of living in America is we're taught from an early age to be independent and go hang your own shingle, go, the American dream, blah 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 blah. And that's great. We do have the American dream. However, God didn't create us to be independent. He created us to be interdependent, that we need each other, that we're designed for relationships. Unfortunately, for most people, when it comes to relationships, it's very superficial. Things, if I say to you, hey, Rob, how are you doing? What are you going to say?
Good.
And then what are you going to ask me back?
How are you doing? Right, exactly.
I'm fine, right? And it's like, hey, it was good seeing you. And that's it. And that's all the deeper, many conversations go, or if you do go deeper, it's news, weather, sports, how's the kids, grandkids, that type of thing. And we're designed for so much more than that. And that's hard because there's a vulnerability that comes from that. But once you become vulnerable with others and share here's who I really am, and people can accept you for that, that is such a freeing place to be.
Yeah.
But it's hard. And one of the things that's interesting is in you remember in like Greek plays and stuff that they would have I'm trying to find like a pencil or something. Here's a Sharpie. They would have like a wooden dowel, and then it would have a mask on it.
Yeah.
They would hold up the thing in front of them. It was a mask, and then with this hand they'd hold up another one. The reason that they did that was that back in those times, with like the Roman Empire times, women weren't allowed to be in plays, and so men needed to be able to play the role of a woman, and so they would use these masks, to sort of do their thing. And they had small casts, so 6 people could play 20 different parts just by holding these different things up. And so the actual Greek word for these actors is hypocrites. Well, take a wild guess what English word we get from hypocrites.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Hypocrites, right? And basically what a hypocrite is somebody that's holding up a mask in front of themselves and pretending to be somebody that they really aren't. And all of us have this internal desire that I want people to truly know who I am. I don't want to have to play the role of Gilbert. I want people to actually know Gilbert, okay? And all of us want that, but it's just so hard to do that. So I have that, obviously, with the church. And you asked earlier, what's one of being a part of a church? It's a place to take the masks off and, here's who I am. And come into hopefully a loving community of people that will come alongside of you and love you and pray for you, encourage you, kick you in the butt if you need a kick in the butt. It's just about that we're better together. And that's what Scripture says, that 2 are better than 1 because they have a good return for the work. One falls down, his brother will be there to help him up. But pity the man who falls and has no one there to help him up. And so I get that in Christian community. You can get that in the poker community as well. Talking about that, a lot of us become very, very good friends with one another, and we're able to do that. Now, for those of us that are Christians, we're a little bit more used to taking the mask off, and even for us, it can be hard. So it's harder for people that aren't used to that to get that vulnerable with one another, but it is a place for it to start. For me, poker community, as far as my personal benefit that I get out of it, is more of just the people there through the downswings. I think I heard Sloss talk about this the other night a little bit. When you go through a downswing, it's easy to start thinking, oh my goodness, the game passed me by. Everybody else is so much better than I am now. And I'm so horrible, right? And you beat yourself up. And so to have that community of people that are there that can encourage you that, no, you made the right decision there. You just got unlucky. And it happened again the next night, and the next night, and the next night, and last month, and the month before that, right? So that's one of the benefits, is just the sanity side of it. And then also the sharing of hands and strategy. Hey, have you thought about this or whatever?
What do you say to people? You said you've talked to people in like Russia and Switzerland, like all over the world. Like, what do you say to people who are like, hey, I'm kind of listening to this. It's kind of cool. I kind of like the faith, I think, but like, I'm in this town. There's not a lot of churches. I don't have a lot of I don't know any Christians around my area. Like, what do you say to people who maybe like they like the idea and the sound of it, but like from a community standpoint, like they can't just walk into your church, you know, on Sunday. Maybe they'd like to, but like realistically, you know, they just can't walk in your church and hang out and be a part of your community. What do you tell people? Like, how do you advise them in situations like that? What is your recommendations for them?
Yeah, so the first thing is we try to find them a church. They may just not know that something's there. But then there are legitimate things, like when Alex was in Costa Rica, that, you know, there was a bunch of Catholic churches and he needed, you know, more Protestant type of church. And even the Protestant type of church, he wanted something more contemporary. You know, it's not offered. So then that's where you got to get creative and use an online community. And there's many great churches that are out there that stream their services online and actually have dedicated online campus. So they have their own pastor that just pastors the internet crowd. And what will happen is, you know, and it's cool. The churches do so. Great show. They do that. Elevation Church, which is down near, or no, you're not in North Carolina. Everybody else is in North Carolina. You're not.
I'm working my way there. It's in the plans. Yeah.
But you know, Elevation, that's down there. They have a great online campus.
Yeah.
But basically, they have their own online pastor. If in the message the pastor says, "Hey, raise your hand," on the keyboard, you know, they can hit you know, hit H for hand, and their
Right.
little emoji hand, you know, comes up and stuff. You know, sort of like what we have the emojis here on Twitch and stuff. But they're able to actually participate in the actual service. And then those churches offer online small groups, because you learn in rows, but you grow in circles. And what I mean by that is, you know, on Sundays people come to hear me speak and stuff, but it's like a school bus. I'm up front. I'm the school bus driver. People are in their rows, you know, and they're sitting on the school bus. They're going wherever I take them. They don't have any choice. But, you know, it's always great for people. And that's, you know, one of the values of having this stream, that, you know, you and I are doing most of the talking, but we're able to interact with the people that are here in chat. Yeah. Because there's people on Sundays in, you know, our churches that I really like to be able to ask a question right now, but I can't. This isn't the environment.
Right.
So you learn in those rows, but then you really grow when you get in a circle of other people, and you can say, hey, whether it's a Christianity thing, if Gilbert said this on Sunday, I didn't quite understand. Can somebody help me understand it? Or, hey, Rob said this in the chat the other night about this strategy, you know, for poker. Can somebody explain that to me? Because, you know, again, right now it's a very one-way conversation that we're having with limited interaction. But if you're in a small group of people, you can learn a lot that way.
Yeah, for sure. And lifechurch.tv, right, is Groshel's?
Yeah, lifechurch.tv, but they also have church.
And then there's Elevation. Is it elevationchurch.org, I think?
Yeah. I forget if church is on the end of it, or
I can't remember if it's just Elevation. If you Google Elevation Church, it'll come up.
Yeah, Stephen Furtick.
Yeah, and they've got an app. Yeah, Furtick is one of those guys. I will. It's weird. I kind of binge him. I'll get into a spot in my life and I'll just like binge watch him for like 3 or 4 days, and it's always seems to be like what I need in the moment, and then, you know, I won't, and then I'll go like 3 months without watching any of his stuff. It's just kind of interesting.
Strange confession of the Thurston household. I'm not the favorite pastor in this household.
Oh, really?
My wife has always listened to Stephen Furtick, and I don't mind that because it is weird. I can understand that for her, that I'm her husband, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I am her pastor, but I'm her husband too. So she needs some spiritual nourishment other than just hearing my voice.
Sure.
Because she gets to hear it at home. So
yeah, for sure.
I'm number 2 here in the household.
Wee says, when PokerStars comes to Pennsylvania, are you going to try and take a shot at being at the top for Pocket Fives?
Yep. If you guys don't know, Pennsylvania recently became the 4th state to legalize online gaming. And actually, let me touch on that too, since I actually said the wrong thing. A lot of people misunderstand about the legalese of the United States. There's only 2 states that it's actually illegal to play online gaming. What the whole thing when Black Friday hit and everything, and what the Port Authorization Act and all that was about, was it made it illegal for banks to knowingly take a gambling transaction from an online site. So you playing, or us playing, Rob, you're in Illinois and you're playing on offshore accounts here. That is not illegal for you to be doing at all. What's illegal is for your bank to take a deposit or a withdrawal, or even a deposit directly from the poker site here.
Right.
So when we talk about legalizing, Pennsylvania became the fourth state where they've now said, okay, you can directly interact online with a gambling site. So anyway, we have 11 casinos here in the state of Pennsylvania, and the fee for them to get a license was $10 million just to get a license. And they had a 60-day window to offer it, and day 1 went by, nobody did it. Day 5 went by, day 30, nothing.
Yeah.
Day 60, 9 of the 11 ponied up $10 million to get their license. Now they're in the process of each of them partnering with someone else, and who was it? Was it me that asked this question?
Yeah.
So PokerStars just announced who they're partnering with, and there's the potential that we will have 9 different poker sites in the state of Pennsylvania by early 2019. So I'll try all the different ones, see which ones get the biggest fields. Hopefully, and the way our Pennsylvania law was written, we will be allowed to have interstate contracts with New Jersey, Delaware, and Nevada. It's not going to start that way from day 1, but hopefully that'll happen soon. And what's interesting, the state of Pennsylvania, what are we? We're like the 5th largest state, I think, in the United States. So we have a pretty big player pool just by ourselves. In fact, if I remember right, our player pool is about equal to what New Jersey, Delaware, and Nevada are combined.
Yeah, you're really close to where Illinois is in terms of population and stuff. So
so it's going to be interesting. Potential sites come on to see, et cetera, et cetera. So I'll have my hand in a little bit of all of them, and I've played PokerStars both in New Jersey and Nevada. Had forgotten how much I love the software. Again, I love Merge's software, but there's some pretty cool things. But again, it's a business, so to take my business where the best ROI is going to come from. So if it's doing that, one of those, great. What has happened is Merge has pulled out of some of the other states that are legalized.
Yeah.
And so we'll see how long it takes for them to do that in Pennsylvania. But yeah, looking forward to doing that and being actually tracked again on Pocket Fives and see if we can get back to number 1.
For sure. Thank you for the biddies, KB. Appreciate you being here, buddy.
KB in chat. Hey, KB.
He also asked...
KB's a great guy, guys.
Oh,
if
he's
you
phenomenal.
don't follow his stream. And we got to hang out the other year. We were all at Cheer.
Oh, that's right. You guys were all there at the same time. You had the private sit and go and whatnot.
Yeah, actually, I left. We planned that as part of a vacation, and so we had a timeshare down there, and so we were about 40 minutes away from their cabin. But I went out and hung out, but they didn't start that sit and go. It was like after midnight, I think, or something.
Super late.
I was like, I still gotta drive through a mountainous road that I'm not familiar with, so I better get on the road. So
it does get pretty wild out there. What is you mentioned Bitcoin before? Like, what is your take on Bitcoin? What's your kind of stance, and how are you approaching Bitcoin these days? Touchy subject.
Hashtag sigh. Here's my Bitcoin bad beat story.
Oh no.
So, but it's actually, so there's a good part of it, there's a bad part of it. So on Merge, what I did for many, many years was they only allowed 2.5K checks at a time. And so what I would do is I'd run my roll, I withdraw 2,500, run it up to 5,000, withdraw 2,500, rinse and repeat, just keep doing it over and over and over again. And it was about 3 years ago, I think, that when Carbon went through their slowdown with cash outs.
Mm-hmm.
And because of my bankroll management, because 5,000 was usually my max bankroll that I had, it meant that I wasn't really playing anything more than the $33 tournaments. Now at the time, and a lot of people forget this, 3 years ago, way bigger than ACR. It was the number one site. And so they had the $33 tournaments, $60 tournaments. They had the 109s. They had 162s, 215s, 550s, if I remember them all right. And so I never played those bigger things than the 33 just because I only had either 2,500 to 5,000 at any time in the bankroll.
Right.
Well, then Merge went through this period where the cash outs started getting slower and slower and slower and slower to the point it was like 3 months between checks. And what it allowed me to do was, because my bankroll was growing, I started bigger tournaments because I had always thought I could probably hang with those guys, but I wasn't sure because I was sticking to my bankroll management. Well, what ended up happening was, because I'm not getting checks, I'm like, all right. And we weren't even sure if we were ever going to get our money. So I just let it kept growing, and I started playing these bigger tournaments and started thinking some of these bigger tournaments. I ended up at one point, I think it was like 80,000 that I had on the site. And again, that was a very nerve-wracking time because it's like,
did you say 80,000? Did I hear that correctly? Wow. Yeah, that would be nerve-wracking.
And I'm like, am I going to see this money or not? And so then they said, hey, well, we're doing 5 bank wires. And so started doing that. And so started taking it off and got it down. And so it was down to 42,000 when they said, we're switching you over to 5,000 in Bitcoin at a time. And I was like, okay, I've heard of Bitcoin, but, not really sure about this. So I was like watching a little bit, the fluctuations. You had to go from Merge to blockchain to Coinbase, Coinbase to your bank, because Coinbase wouldn't handle gambling transactions.
Right.
And so it was weird because I'm taking these 5,000 withdrawals in Bitcoin at a time, and as fast as I can, I'm taking it from the poker site to blockchain. As soon as I got the notification, blockchain right to Coinbase, and as soon as I saw it was confirmed in Coinbase, right to my bank account, because I was like, I'm not taking any chances on this. Now, the interesting thing about that 42,000 actually ended up in the bank as 48,000. So I made 6,000 just in the wild swings of quickly transferring things over, right? So I ended up net positive on that. However, that would have been like late, let's see, this is what, 2018? So that would have been end of 2016, early 2017. And of course, we all know that 2017 kept that 42,000. By December, it would have been almost 800,000 or something like that.
Right.
Which I probably wouldn't have cashed it all out, but I would have cashed out a pretty good chunk of it. But so again, I still made net positive on it. So then after I saw all that happening, I decided, okay, I'm going to keep some amount still in Bitcoin. And so I have 5 different, I have Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, a little bit of Bitcoin Cash, and Ripple. So it's a very small part of our investment portfolio that we have, but I'm just letting it ride. I basically said, hey, I made that 6,000 that just in transactions before. So if I lose that, I lose it. But we'll hold.
Yeah.
Right? That's what we're supposed to do. Just hold. Just hold.
Danny Knowles just walked in chat and said, have we covered who the real poker pastor is? There can only be one. It's funny because so the story behind me, I made that name on ACR back when and do you remember Dan Bautista? Oh God, what did he go by? Little Dan something or other on PokerStars. Little Hold'em. Little Hold'em was his name. He was like a crusher in online poker, and had tons of success. And he was kind of one of those guys you kind of looked at as, quote, the dream life. Obviously, we know there's no such thing as a dream, but, like he was making all the money and, young guy and having all these accolades. I think he'd won the Sunday Million one or twice, and he had like committed suicide. And it was one of those like, and of course now like we're getting smarter about mental illness and all of these things that lead into like suicidal situations, but it's just kind of one of those people that not to be cliche, but it's just like why you never would have expected it, right? Like he was the guy that had everything going right. How could he possibly kill himself? And like that was a time for me where, and there have been a couple others that were like really like just kind of shocking suicides in the poker world, and I just remember kept coming back to this place of like, I just wonder if they had anywhere else to turn. I just wonder if they felt like they had anywhere to go, anyone to talk to, anyone to reach out to. Because I definitely, even at that time, had a few friends in poker who I knew were just like, I wouldn't walk in a church. I don't want someone telling me I got to quit playing poker, or that I'm some horrible gambler, or I'm going to hell because I play, like there's that mindset's out there. And so like there was just a part of me wondering, like, maybe not. I mean, I don't know what was going on there, but what if, what if they didn't have anywhere to turn? What if they didn't feel comfortable reaching out for help? What if they felt like they wanted to make a faith connection, but they thought that they would be judged for it? And that really kind of spurred me on. And so I created the Poker Pastor name on ACR, and the idea came to life. And then like you guys talked about, the cash outs like slowed down to like 12 weeks, and like investor money had dried up. I was playing staked back then a lot, and like the whole thing just fell apart, and I had to go get a day job, and like I was completely like done with the thing. And then Drew, like I talked to you introduced me to Drew. I started coaching with Drew, and like I had no desire to get into Twitch or do any of that stuff. And then Drew just really started pushing me on it. And I think it was the moment where Drew was on a stream, and he was just talking about how powerful faith had been for him. And he said, he was like, I just don't think I ever would have become a Christian if I hadn't come across Gilbert. It's like, maybe, you never know what would happen or whatever, but like practically speaking, he's like, I just don't think I would have been. And if it wasn't for poker, he's like, if it wasn't for poker, this never would have happened. And that was kind of like a big light bulb moment for me, and it kind of brought everything from 7 years previous back to the forefront. And I'm like, man, like I need to get back into this. So it was so funny though, because like I started, like I had the name on ACR, and then I started looking at Twitter names, and I like Poker Pastor was taken, and then like your Poker Pastor was taken, and so like we like it kind of became this funny thing. Like the first 2 months I streamed, I didn't even think about it. Like people kept coming in like, hey Gilbert, how's it going? And I was like, Gilbert? Yeah, Chad Batista, Little Hold'em. Yeah, Killingbird had it right.
You and I are close enough friends right now, but when you first got back, I had people going, are you a Poker Pastor on ACR? Or, which they're like, I didn't think that you played that bad.
Yeah, I have no doubt. Because when I came back, like it was funny, like it's almost like cryostasis, right? Like I trained back in the Black Friday days. I coached under Ari Engel and right. Herschel W. and some other really, really good crushers. And then I didn't play for 5 years, So it was right. Like, I was like back in the old era. And to be fair, like I wasn't even like that great back then. Like I'd had some big scores, and I was starting to pick the game up. Like I knew enough to be dangerous, and I was aggressive enough to be good. Like, cause back then if you were aggressive, you were good. Like that's all it took. You just had to be aggressive. So yeah, I had a lot of work to do, and Drew like got into my HUD and was like, whoo, like he was really nice with me about the whole thing. It's like, okay, let's look at this. Let's think about this. Yeah, that's funny. So I have no doubt. But no, I think it's really cool. And actually, I've actually heard of a few other people. I haven't gotten to meet them, but I've had people come up to me and say, oh, I know this person in South Carolina that's a poker pastor. And like, I think it's awesome. I think that, I think there should be more. I think that the more that happens, the better. And what's cool too is like 7 years ago when I was thinking about this, I was terrified about the idea, because I literally thought I'm the only person in poker who right. has a faith background or believes like that this can even coexist. I just literally thought that there was no way it could coexist. And then now like it blows my mind how many there are. They're everywhere, right? Like they, I when I'd go live, I'd go play live tournaments, and somebody would see my shirt and they would like lift up their card protector and there'd be a verse underneath it, and like it's just really, really cool. And I think it's awesome that there's so many people willing to do that. And like you said at the very beginning, I think you nailed it good. Like, there's that verse that everybody latches onto in the Bible that, when, the gospel's been preached in every country, every tongue, every tribe, every nation, and they all take that so literally, and they all take it to like, well, we just got to go to every country, and like, I feel like we're in a world now where like country, tribe, and nation is cultural. Like we like now we've got goth, and we've got hippie, and we've got all Generation X and Generation Y and Generation Z, and now there's all the transgender and trans new, like there's all of these cultures that exist that are now they're their own field, like they're their own communities, and they need people that reach up and come into that community and say, hey, I can be a beacon, I can be an opportunity to reach out if you need it, and so it's like a brand new world almost, I think, and so like poker's one of those places that exists. And again, like we I don't know, I'm biased maybe, but I just feel like I meet some of the coolest people in poker, and I would never meet any of them if I wasn't a poker player.
Right. Agreed. Yep.
Oh, that's all you got? I talk too much.
No, that was good, and I think that's what I was saying earlier, that Rochelle's thing of to reach people that nobody else is willing to reach, and must be willing to do nobody else is willing to do. And unfortunately, when churches and Christians think about reaching people who are far from God, they go to the low-hanging fruit of people that are already very interested in spirituality and stuff, and forget that, as you said, there's atheists out there. There's golf community, or and every community has people that are followers, and well, I guess atheists wouldn't, but and then people that are really, really far from God. So. Yeah, I like that there's a lot of great people in the poker community, but there's a lot of hurting people as well. And if I can help in any way, I'm here to help.
So let me ask, and I know you're a super busy person, so I don't want to like bombard your email box or your Twitter or anything, but like if there are people, original poker pastor 1, contemporary poker pastor 0, I don't know which one's which. If I'm assuming you're 1 maybe, because you you're talking about the people saying I sucked. No, but like if people, if they have questions, if they, they've heard you talk about things, and maybe they have deeper questions for you, or maybe they have questions that they aren't comfortable asking publicly on stream, but they're like, what's a good way for them to interact with you, reach out to you, get a hold of you, that, so on and so forth?
So you can follow me on Twitter, Pastor. That's at Your Poker Pastor, and email is Gilbert@exponential.church. Again, Gilbert@exponential, EXPONENTIAL.church. And you can shoot me an email. That's a lot of times, if it's going to be something that's pretty in depth, that's usually a really good way that you can get hold of me.
And you're
yeah.
I know the church site's you've got some your past sermons are on there, which is cool. So if people want to hear you talk about different topics, or just kind of get
all 8 years are archived. Yep.
Do you guys broadcast your service?
Not live, no.
Okay.
Yeah, right now we just do the audio podcast. Subscribe on iTunes, Exponential Church. And again, all 8 years is there. If there's a certain topic that somebody's like, hey, I'm struggling with anger, I'm struggling with, whatever. If you let me know that, I can usually point you in a direction of a message, or even maybe of a whole series that I've done on particular topics.
I have definitely shopping carted your website before, so I, hopped in there like, what, I want to hear about this, and so I know I've definitely done that. There's some really, really good content on there, and I love, I think we've got similar styles. Like, I mean, you've never seen me preach, of course, and it's been a few years since I've like had like a traditional church preaching environment, but like that same kind of practical knowledge and bringing it into contemporary culture and being relevant is a huge passion of mine. And I love people that speak with that, because at the end of the day, like, people want to be able to relate, and they want to be able to connect, and they want something that's tangible that they can reach onto, versus the just over the head pie in the sky, like glossy, I don't even know what to call it. I know what to call it, but I don't want to use the term.
Well, what I've found is a lot of pastors, it's a pride thing, that they're like, if I say stuff that sounds really, really smart and use big words, people are going to go, wow, he's really, really smart. He must be really, really, but then they walk out and they're like, I didn't get anything out of it, but wow, he's really smart. but that's not my job. My job is to take very complex things and break it down and make it very, very simple to understand. So I always, as I'm putting together messages, I'm always thinking, if I was walking into a church for the very first time and I had no exposure to church, no exposure to the Bible or whatever, would this make sense or not? Not just that we do that for our entire church service of everything. And, will this make sense to random Joe or Mary off the street if they come in? And that takes a lot of work to be able to take the complex and break it down, because it'd be easy just to, without using that word, but, let's talk about sanctification. You need to be sanctified. People are like, okay, sure, right? But then to actually break it down and explain, what that means. So, yeah, we do that with everything. We're a very contemporary church, so I wear jeans and a T-shirt every week. Why? Because people are like, one of the excuses, I don't have anything to wear to church. Okay, great, come to Exponential because the pastor's going to be in jeans and a T-shirt.
I love it.
We tell people not to give, because what's one of the objections people have to church? Oh, they just want our money. So we tell, if you're a guest with us, we don't want your money. We're just glad that you're here. We want to try to bless you in any way that we can. And, things like that, people are like, what? This is different. And again, the messages, that I rap sometimes in messages, when I'm breaking out Snoop Dogg in messages, people are like, huh? So
that's funny.
Anyway, yeah, just trying to bridge contemporary culture to what Scripture says.
Yeah.
And, I remember when I went to my previous church, one of the first series we did was called God Pod. And it was how to find God in your iPod. And we literally built a replica iPod out of plywood and a projector screen. And so it was, I want to say it was like 18 feet high, 6 feet wide, whatever. And so when people come in that morning, boom, here's this huge stinking video iPod. And, we did a whole, video thing with me, all that kind of stuff. And then our band would cover, one of the secular songs that was at the top of the charts that week. And, I remember one of the songs was Crazy by Gnarls Barkley. And so the band covers it. And I did a whole message about this king called Nebuchadnezzar in the Old Testament who was crazy. And, gave very practical things on, just things that people could do in life based on this message. And what was so cool about that then, and we still do that even here in my church, Exponential, that, we'll occasionally cover secular songs. The reason that we do that isn't so that we can be cool, but we're trying to take people's mindset that they're going, oh, this is a really catchy song, to now they've linked that message to the song. So the next time that Crazy came on the radio, they remembered not that, oh, this is a really catchy song, I really love Gnarls Barkley. They remembered, oh, here's what Gilbert taught.
Yeah.
Because when it comes to Christianity, and this, James said, don't just be a hearer of God's word, be a doer of God's word. So it's not enough just to hear and intellectually fill your mind with a bunch of facts. Eventually, it has to come out of you. You have to act on it. And so that's all we're doing is that, boom, Crazy comes on the radio, and somebody's like, oh, here's what I need to do. Here's my next step that I need to take to sort of progress in my spiritual journey. And so, again, we try to do that with everything in the church, to think, how can we break this down, these very complex spiritual things, and say it in a way that people are going to understand.
Yeah, I like it.
And I love that. I love it. And again, that's why I connected with Drew so much, is because he had done that same thing with Pokemon. He took Pokemon, connected it to poker, and taught a lesson on it. I was like, wait, that's the way I preach. And that's how we ever. Yeah,
I wish we'd met sooner, because like that it resonates with so many things that I just love. And I've been in a lot of places where that style and that approach just like confuses the crap out of people, like I don't know, it's I think it's cool that there's lots of different styles and flavors of church, and they reach different styles of people, but I love being relatable to people. I think when you look at the numbers and the number of churches that are shrinking and the number of churches that are closing their doors, I think church has become largely irrelevant to the general population. And we do have a charge, I don't know what you want to call it, a mission, to get back to a place where people that have practical needs and practical hurts can find help in a practical way. It doesn't mean there's not a spiritual component. There's a massive spiritual component. We can't do anything without God, but that I always love that verse, like,
Sorry, my printer just came on.
Oh, you're okay. It's like, whose father, when he needs food, gets a rock. It's like I think sometimes the church is guilty of, we get people who need food. They need, like you said, they're a beggar, and we're throwing rocks at them, or we're giving them, like, oh, let's teach you about our building campaign, and
Well, as you look at the example of Jesus, he always met somebody's felt need before he met their spiritual need. So if they are hungry, he fed them. And then he said,
Yeah.
Look, if you want to hunger no more, I'm the bread of life. If they were thirsty, he gave them something to drink. He's like, okay, here. But if you want to thirst no more, rivers of living water, flow out of me. So he always, if they were blind, if they were sick, whatever, he met that. But he's like, okay, in the case of, blindness, it's, hey, I fixed your physical eyesight, but you're spiritually blind, and so he always met that felt need of what they thought they needed before he gave them what they truly needed.
Right. That's so true.
And again, because we're supposed to become more and more like Jesus, we need to do the same thing. And so that's why we do so much, outreach, not just here in Harrisburg, but throughout the nation and around the world, especially down in Haiti, just because we are called to be the hands and feet of Jesus. And my prayer that I pray every single is, God, I'll go wherever it is you want me to go. I'll do whatever it is you want me to say. I'll give whatever it is you want me to give. Because it's not about what Gilbert wants. It's, having an agenda-ectomy, so to speak. And it's, my agenda has to come out and his agenda has to be at the forefront. And every day I wake up and I think I know what the plan's going to be for that day, but I say to God, hey, if you want it to be something completely different, then I'm going to be open to that. I'm not going to. I know that his way is always better than my way.
Yeah.
And I know people listen to this that maybe you're not a follower or whatever, you think that we're crazy talking like this, but again, I'm 45 now. I lived the first 20 years with Satan and doing things my way and how I thought it should be. And the last 25 now for Jesus, and just submitting to him, saying, here I am. Where do you want me to go? What do you want me to do? What do you want me to say? What do you want me to give? And it's just so absolutely amazing to have that type of peace in your life, knowing that you don't have to figure it out. He's going to give you what you need. So that's again, very, very peaceful. But then just the impact that you can have in the hearts and lives of people because you're willing to be the hands and feet of Jesus to others. That's very, very gratifying and satisfying, is knowing that other people's lives are different because I was willing to invest a little bit in their lives, and that they're going to be a better person, not just here on the earth, but also find that connection with him and spend eternity with him forever. So that's why we call it exponential. That's, all of us are called to have an exponential in this life and make the biggest difference that we possibly can.
Yeah. I love it. I'm definitely looking forward to checking it out. You don't know my wife, but she is definitely a person that when she sees something that she knows is going to be very healthy for me, she's a stickler about it. So as we get information in and I can figure out when I can make it out there, she's gonna make sure I get out there. So really looking forward to coming out and meeting your family and seeing the church, and just kind of seeing the cool things that are happening there. And I definitely hope that we can have you on again in the future. I think people love to hear from you, and dude, this has been fun for me. It's, again, like I keep going back to how, like, I love every time someone comes to me and says, oh, Drew impacted my life, because as soon as they say that, I'm like, well, that started back with Gilbert. And like, and it's not that it's like, oh well, everybody that drew impacts is like you get the credit for it. And like, but it's just, it's more that it's the roots branching out. It's just amazing how little things lead to big things, and little opportunities lead to big opportunities. And you know, again, like that blog like that you've been posting, like you're the only one blogging on Pocket Fives now.
Yeah, apparently.
Like you own
Yeah,
that blog, right?
right.
But
That's the
like,
other thing we didn't mention.
was that?
Pocket Five. Yeah, I
Oh
was
yeah.
going to say that's the other thing we had. You go to pocketfives.com. Right on their homepage, they feature different blogs. As of the last couple of months, there are other people that do it, but for whatever reason, the last couple of months, I've been the only one. I think 3 of my blogs are featured right on their homepage right now. But that's how you can sort of keep up with how my poker grind is going, just life in general, what's going on. And this month, I already know what I'm in 10 more days when the month's over.
Yeah.
I'm going to do a thing on how all variance is not created equal. And I think I'm going to share some interesting numbers that people be like, whoa. And it'll help you with the whole variance and tilt and all that a little bit more.
I'm looking forward to that. I read them every month now, and yeah, I mean, it's just like I could not have come across your blog at a better time and a more key time in my life with what I was going through. And so it's cool. It's cool, all the impacts that are being made. And someday, you know, some of these people who have been impacted by you and Drew are going to impact people of their own. And I'm going to be hearing, you know, 3rd, 4th, 5th generation stories of just the impacts that have been made. And you know, let that just be an encouragement to all of you in the stream. Like, you just like you just don't underestimate, I guess is what I would say. Don't underestimate little things and the impacts they can have. Sometimes we see situations where we can have an impact and we're like, it's not going to make that much of a difference, and we don't want to go through with it. But you just don't know. You just don't know. Right. And very intimately, you guys all love Drew. You support Drew, as you should. He's a huge friend of ours and a huge fan of the stream. Yep. Like, I mean, what if Gilbert, you know, hadn't been willing to get coaching, or hadn't been willing to talk with him, or hadn't willing to share him? Like, you know, we might not know Drew. We might know a very different Drew. The Caliplex might be something completely different. So just don't underestimate what can happen. But thank you so much, Gilbert. I mean, you took well over 2.5 hours out of your
oh wow, yep,
your evening. I really appreciate it, and we will definitely do this again.
All right, love to do it. Thanks, guys. And again, please reach out to me, prayer or anything, whether it's the Twitter or email, on the blog. That's one of the things Pocket Fives doesn't show exactly how many people are reading the blog, so I have no idea who reads it, who doesn't. So if you want to just even comment on those, hey, I read it, or things you want me to write about in the future, because I'm every month trying to figure out, okay, what I'm going to write this month. So I'd love that as well. But again, thanks for the time. And I'll see you on the Fortnite streets here a little bit later.
Oh my gosh, it's so embarrassing.
It is. You and I are like the world's 2 lowest ranked players.
No, that's funny, because like when you play, the way you talk like you've been playing that game for 20 years. Like I've
been like going for 10 days.
Like you sound like you've got the whole game down. It's just like, again, like you and Drew, you guys start talking, and I'm literally like, that one time I had gotten killed, and I'm like, I gotta, like, okay, they're not called grenades, they're called nades. And it's not called a rare, like, automatic, right? It's called a scar. And like, I'm just like going through the list and trying to keep up. And the other thing is great is like, you've got this like, you've got this kind of, not mechanical, but like you've got this voice when you're playing in the game that would sound exactly like you would expect some general or sergeant or like high level official to have. You're like, okay, we're going to coordinates 327. Like, it's just like you like fit the part. And so like I'm listening to this, I'm just like, man, like he's got this game down, and he's like, they're so good, and like, oh, you know, I lasted 12 seconds.
Yeah, like I say, I've been playing like 10 days, so 4 days ago.
Well, maybe I'll come by for some coaching. Like, maybe while I'm out in PA, I can look over your shoulder and learn everything. But seriously, Gilbert, thanks again for the bottom of my heart. I appreciate it. And I'll probably, if you're okay, I'll probably get this posted on YouTube next week, because I'm sure there'll be some people that wanted to see it. And if you want to copy that, of course, I'll get that to you as well. So thanks again, buddy. Have a wonderful evening, and we'll do this again soon, buddy.
All right, sounds good.
All right, take care.
All right, bye.
That was